City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded April 6th, 2026.
At 6 o'clock, we'll call the City Plan Commission meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Wiesa?
Here.
Alderperson Kneebone?
Here.
Commissioner Artson?
Here.
Commissioner Beacom?
Here.
Commissioner Rice?
Here.
Commissioner Shady Strike?
Here.
Commissioner Schuler?
Here. And we do have everyone present, so we'll move on. Let me get to sharing this. And there. All right, so item number 2 is the report of the March 2nd meeting of the Plan Commission. Those minutes and actions were included in your packet. Need a motion to accept those and place them on file, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Seconded by Arnson. Discussion? Any comments from the audience? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 3 is a public hearing with subsequent action on a request from the City of Stevens Point to amend Chapter 23 of its zoning ordinance. Said request amends Section 23.02, Sub 4, Sub C, pertaining to general standards and land use regulations with the AH, or Airport Height Overlay District. Adam?
All right, so the map that's shown on the screen is the boundary of the Airport Height Overlay District. Essentially what this overlay district does is that it establishes maximum height allowances by parcel, and you can see probably vaguely the max elevation that's allowed within each of those individual red squares. Second piece that this overlay district does is that it does have some land use regulations, essentially making sure that you don't have uses incompatible with airport operations occur within those overlay districts. The purpose of the ordinance amendments at your review tonight is really twofold. One is to establish some general standards for any sort of land use and development proposals in the overlay district. That would be general standards pertaining to glare, lighting, electrical interference, and visibility. These are standards that are part of the FAA's review as part of any land use proposal, but having this in our local ordinance achieves some good overlap for you folks when considering similar requests. Second piece of the ordinance amendment is to outline permitted uses that's shown on page 10 of the packet. Permitted uses that align solely with the use, operation, administration, pick another synonym, of the municipal airport itself. So those uses that are shown on here would be allowed only if they're occurring in direct coordination with the operation of the airport. These land uses have been reviewed with our utilities director and is almost verbatim with other municipal zoning ordinances and county ordinances that have similar airport overlay districts. Staff would recommend approval and happy to take any questions.
Okay. Before we open up the public hearing, any clarifying questions from the commissioners? Yes, Mr. Artson.
I just had one about the glare and how that would be judged, and I just think it's curious, metal buildings, glasses, is it glaring pointing up at the airplanes? And
the purpose of that is to,
at that,
so the pilots are driving, right, or flying. You don't want things shining in their eyes, distracting them. So anything that would reflect up to that distance would be prohibited. The same. You can't use laser pointers near the airport. It's actually a felony, I believe, to point them at an airplane. I don't know that we're going to have a lot of issues because the airplanes are coming in for approach. It'd have to be pretty reflective, so I don't think like a steel roof or something like that would
right. How would you note that going in? Right. If somebody has a steel roof, a reflective one, can you what are the options? So I just never thought about it.
Joel's not here.
Some folks.
Yeah,
I can try and field it.
Yeah, intentionally, at least communicating with other communities, intentionally intentionally, it's meant to be a little bit more vague to allow more subjectivity for you folks as decision makers.
So if somebody comes in with a development plan in this area, you'd look at it and say, do you got any glaring surfaces type
Yes.
thing?
So what I would, in discussing it with the Public Utilities Director and trying to understand what that means, it would be things like if Pete Arnson wanted to open up a greenhouse and you had the roof that was semi-conductor reflective, it would be a conditional use that if there was interference and the FAA determined that it was too much of a problem, you'd have to make a change, right? The whole goal is safety for those aircraft.
Right, right.
So while you won't be able to necessarily put your finger on what could affect it, we put conditions on that if it does affect it, you have to fix it.
All right. I just thought
Does that
was
make
curious.
sense?
Thanks, yep.
Okay. I'm probably saying it a lot worse than Joel would have explained it, but that's the way we go. Alderperson Nebo.
I just have a couple quick questions, and I will admit I didn't read the whole ordinance. Is there a height limitation? There's usually a height
Always.
restriction.
Yep, and
Yeah,
that's
that's
what these
the-
little red squares are.
But-
I know you can't see it now.
Do you know how high it is?
Each one's different.
Each one's different. It's
Oh, okay.
basically, it's
See if I
more
can-
restrictive the closer you
Let me
get
see if I
to
can
the
zoom in.
Anywhere in there you can't
Okay.
build higher than that
So-
point, right?
pixelated.
It's blurry
very
and
bad.
pixelated,
Okay.
but you can see that's, Jesus, I don't know which is better. Here's
Depends on
1,100 feet.
Depends on the
Yeah,
topography?
this one's 1,100 feet, this
That
one's
and
1177,
Gotcha.
path travel.
1156.
And do we have anything preventing drones? There must be in the ordinances
There is
somewhere.
already.
Okay.
Actually, it's federal.
Or FAA.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to clarify. I figured there must be, but just make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then I think it's within 5 miles of the airport, you have to get permission from the airport manager
Okay.
by law.
Sounds good.
All right, any other questions before I open up the public hearing? Okay, with that, the public hearing is open. If you wish to offer testimony on this request, step to the lectern, name and address for the record. Public hearing is still open. This would include anyone online. And for the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Seeing and hearing no one else wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed, bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Yes,
I will move to approve the ordinance amendments as presented.
thank you. Seconded by Beacom. Discussion. Final comments from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is a public hearing with subsequent action on a request from Mike Helmrick, representing the city of Stevens Point for a preliminary subdivision plat review for an unaddressed parcel bounded by Maria Drive and Union Street North, and an unaddressed parcel bounded by Maria Drive, with the parcels identified in your packet consistent with Chapter 20.05 Sub 1. Adam?
All right, so I'm sure the commission is generally familiar with the plat review process, but just a quick refresher. By statute, there's 2 rounds of review that's needed for any subdivision of land creating 5 or more parcels. First step would be the review and approval of the preliminary subdivision plat. So the preliminary subdivision plat before you today involves these 2 parcels shaded in red on the screen. And in total, the amount of lots that would be created would include 9 developable lots, 1 outlot located more on the south central part of that red shaded area, along with future extensions of 3 streets, 3rd Street, Meadow Street, and Academy Avenue. So looking at the plat itself on the slide shown on the screen, lots 3 through 8 would have a range of lot size from just north of 5,800 square feet to 6,500 square feet in size, and is intended for a single-family residential development. Lot 2 is for the cottage court style development. Lot 1 is for the planned gathering lodge to accompany the Door Dreams proposed development. And then Lot 9 would be intended for future multifamily residential development. Now, the smaller of the 2 parcels, the one kind of encapsulating around the Union Street North extension that has already been built out, That has a base zoning of R4 multifamily 1 residential with a planned development overlay district. That was included as part of the convent redevelopment project and the subsequent land use approvals that were granted for that project back in, I think it was the fall of 2020. The larger of the two parcels is zoned R2 single-family residential. So again, this on the screen shows essentially a summary of what I described above. You can see the planned street extensions, the single-family lots, lots 3 through 8, and then the other remaining lots kind of surrounding that. So again, the purpose of this is to provide guidance to the applicant as to any requested changes that you would like to see in preparation for the final subdivision plat review. I'll note one item that will be added for the final plat, and I know this is going to sound very trivial, but just to be in accordance with the city's addressing ordinance, is to add the word north after 3rd Street, Meadow Street, and Union Street. Because those road sections should be classified as 3rd Street North, Meadow Street North, and Union Street North respectively. So, happy to take any questions.
Before I open up that public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from the commission? Yes.
There are some wetlands in this area, right? Will we see the wetland delineation on a map before we have to make a final decision?
Correct.
I know there's going to be some encroachment by one of the roads, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, for the site plan review. So there'll be, mentioned in the memo, there's a variety of different land use proposals, land use requests that'll be slated before you within the next couple months. Site plan review will be one of them that would require that.
Thanks.
And to follow up on that, I'd be surprised we didn't show anything on the wetlands on here, because they're fairly extensive, and that's also, you know, that drains from the north to the south there, kind of outletting on that southwest corner. That's a significant drainage feature, and I kind of poked around the plans and didn't see anything to that effect. So, and you know, the parcel that they're talking about developing is mainly around the ball diamond, I think, here. But you say it's all this big area. The wetlands are up in that portion and probably won't affect it, but the drainage way comes down through there. And I do believe a new wetland delineation was completed not too long ago. Again, they got a 5-year duration. So I'd be interested in seeing that.
Okay, so Commissioner, keep in mind this is a preliminary plat review. Your concern is that the plats do not affect the drainage areas, and we'll make sure that that gets incorporated in. And of course, the wetland delineation will appear on the next one when we're looking for the final approval. But right now, it's feedback for the plats.
But why wouldn't you include the wetland information? That's kind of part of the preliminary process, and kind of touching on what Jeff said, we do these preliminary approvals and they kind of become final and just kind of usher its way through. And that's a substantial question, I think, about this whole development.
I can understand that. Maybe what we need to do is we start, anytime that there's a wetland in the vicinity, maybe we just start including those in the preliminary plat reviews.
Sure.
Obviously, before the final plat review, you'll have all that information, and of course, we have oversight over the final plat review as well. So if it does affect things that you think it shouldn't, you either get it modified through the plan or you deny it. Commissioner Schuler.
I think Jared had just a comment too. If it does help, there was an item taken to the Finance Committee on March 9th, and in that packet there is a wetland delineation map showing the potential wetland impacts. If that would be a helpful visual for you.
That was with the Finance Committee packet?
Yes, because there's potential disturbance, so that came with some potential fees if you disturb those.
Yeah, it makes sense just to start doing that. I think.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. I could probably track it down.
So my question would be, as these individual sites get to be developed, obviously you have some single-family home sites, and when they pull permits, is a review of the natural features on site, particularly the wetlands, taken into consideration when the location of the home is determined, and I guess activities that would impact the wetlands.
Yeah, it'd be typical not only for this, but for any parcel in the city if there's potential wetland
Okay,
disturbance.
and so the same would even be more so for, say, a multifamily structure or something larger that would that require plan commission site plan approval?
Correct.
So for that larger type of development, we would see that with that engineering and natural resources information on it?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to double check that. Thank you.
Commissioner Rice?
Yeah, just looking for clarification. How does that 20-foot drainage easement or sewer easement affect development on properties that are affected? Or does it not? I mean, can you build on that easement, or is it?
The 20-foot drainage easement at the back of the lots 3 through 8?
Yeah, it looks like it kind of S-curves through it goes through lot 5, and then it's on the western edge of a significant amount of lot, currently what's lot 9, but presumably will be subdivided.
Stormwater pipe. So the stormwater pipe, no, you would not be able to construct over the top of it. It would need to be able to access that for maintenance.
You cannot construct a structure, you can construct a driveway, anything like that.
Okay.
Something minimal you could put over top of it.
Okay.
But knowing that if they needed to access that pipe, what you have over top of it will most likely be dug up. So if it's a flower bed, if it's anything like that,
Okay,
be dug up.
got it, thank you.
All right, I will open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this, step to the lectern, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, everyone. I am Chelsea Martin, and I live at 1017 Maria Drive, directly across the street from this plot. So since this plot is deemed, or part of this plot is deemed as wetlands, has there been any conversation to change course as to what to do with this plot? Maybe make it a conservation piece? Like, if it is deemed mostly wetlands, is there a possibility to change course of how things are moved forward with?
Sorry, so public hearing is offering testimony. We can answer
I'm
your
sorry.
questions
Okay.
after we close the public
Okay.
hearing.
Sorry about
But the real simple answer is no, not really.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess my only piece is that watching the plot of land, we've lived there for about 2 years now, and just seeing the amount of animals that enjoy the space. I mean, it's nice to have a little bit of green space with as many houses are on the north side. So it's just nice to have green space that's not taken up by so many housing pieces. And yeah, that's all I have. So thank you.
Public hearing remains open.
I'm online,
Oof.
and I have a couple questions.
Get
My
better.
name is Mary Furcus. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
So, my name is Mary Furcus, and I live in Denver, but I have the property I grew up on in a house at 233 2nd Street North. And so I have some questions. Who owns that land? Is it city-owned?
The land in question right now
Yes.
for this plat.
I don't know.
Yes.
It's the city owns this parcel, but we haven't transferred it over to Door to Dreams yet, right?
The city owns all of the land within the preliminary plat and has a development agreement signed for Door to Dreams to take ownership of Lot 1 and 2.
Okay. And is this map available online because it is so tiny? Like after the meeting, is there some place where I can like zoom in and see this? Because I can't read anything.
Excuse me. Yes, Mary, it's available online through the agenda, and you should be able to zoom in on the agenda. That's just a PDF file.
Okay. My next question is, will the building be done in phases? Or is everything going to be done, you're going to be digging and all at once?
Hang on one second, because again, this is a public hearing. Normally, we would just take testimony. Are there any objections to answering some of these questions real time by the commission? If the city attorney finds something wrong with that, let me know right now. Otherwise, we're just going to answer the questions. All right, so Mary, yes, it would be developed in phases.
Okay. Now, in my backyard is Moses Creek. Is that going to, and that goes north to south, it flows. Is that affected anyway on this land?
I do not believe so, as we were talking about the wetlands. Obviously, any surface water could affect it, but the wetlands are going to be protected to the best of our ability.
Okay, and my last question is there an easement, since I can't see this map at all, is there an easement? So the convent has a chain link fence going north-south parallel to 2nd Street North. Is there an easement on the east side of that fence in the convent land? So bordering the west side of the convent and my backyard, okay, let's take that as an example. So if I hopped over that fence, is there an easement where you guys can't build?
No. I'm not even aware of a fence on the west side of the convent property.
I think it runs along the property line.
Oh, yeah, there's a,
Right.
yeah, it goes all the way, and in fact, a lot of trees came down in your last ice storm that I have to call the city on, but that are in my backyard now. But yeah, so there's a chain link fence that runs. So like, I can't walk to that convent. I would have to jump the fence.
When she says convent, hang on one second. Commissioner Ernst, when she says convent property, she means the Ball Diamond area, not just where the building was. Is that correct?
Oh, so I'm meaning the whole land, the vacant land. I just call it the convent land since
Sure,
that's what I grew up
and that,
with.
it took me a second for that to click.
Right.
So
On the Ball Diamond.
the
Sorry.
short answer is, there is no deed restriction on where to build. The things that would come into play are where the wetlands are,
Okay,
setbacks potentially, but that would be about it. There's nothing in the deed that requires or maintains a non-buildable area.
oh, okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commissioners. Ma'am, did we get all your questions answered? Sorry, it was a little unconventional, but I figured we'd roll with it.
I guess my only other.
Mine on the line?
I don't know where that's coming from. I'm sorry.
I'm from the lady from Colorado in Denver.
Is it? It says she's muted. Can I have you come up here and ask the question, just so the microphone and people online can hear you and the people in the recording can hear you?
Of course. So outlet number 1, would that be considered a retention pond? And if so, how would that affect the surrounding properties?
It is not a retention pond.
What would it be?
That is going to be, what are they calling it?
Lot 1 is the gathering lodge for dormitories.
Gathering lot.
Oh, I'm sorry, the outlot 1. So on the bottom piece between Meadow and 3rd?
Yeah,
Yes, outlot 1 would be for stormwater retention.
right. And that wouldn't be buildable.
So it's just a retention pond?
Correct.
Would that in any way affect the properties surrounding?
In terms of,
I don't know what.
I don't want water on my property.
No,
Okay.
that should not happen.
Okay.
You might see animals coming there to drink.
Okay.
On warm summer days, you might see more mosquitoes, maybe. Generally, they don't affect the surrounding areas.
Okay.
And generally, there's not standing water in them ever either.
Okay.
They're designed to take the excess runoff and then seep into the ground
Okay.
as quickly as we can.
Okay. Sounds good. That's my only other question. Thank you.
Okay. Where were we? Back to the commissioners. Commissioners? What are your wishes?
I guess I had a couple general questions for
Go ahead.
about the development. I gave Adam a heads up on this a little bit earlier in the day. Just curious how a development like this helps address the city's housing needs in general terms, the things that are provided, how do they fit into what's been discussed, and
Good question. We talk about that quite a bit. Go ahead.
I'll defer to.
Everybody's pointing.
I can take.
Chris will take it.
I'll
There you
respond
go.
to that. So first and foremost, this will help enable the Door to Dreams development and housing for our residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities was a priority as discussed during our housing task force that was completed in 2023. So the subdivision plat will help enable the Door to Dreams development. Secondly, this will help establish 6 single-family lots, and single-family home ownership was one target identified, again, through that plan, another opportunity for owner-occupied housing, as well as meeting some of the strategic recommendations from Synergy's 2025 regional housing study. So there's several opportunities there right away. And then lastly, Lot 9, shown as a multifamily lot, doesn't necessarily imply that it's rental housing. It would be enabled as a multifamily parcel, which could either be used for multifamily rental construction or for multifamily homeowner construction on that parcel. And given the stormwater pipe and the easement over it, will require some creativity to figure out the best layout and format for that.
Okay. So what's the kind of the residential development capacity for that? What's left of the whole property? I guess what can we anticipate in really general terms about what might come forward as the whole project fills in?
Sure. And so I'll also take this opportunity to maybe address Chelsea's other question about open lands and conservation area with the wetlands. Back when we worked with the UWSP planning capstone students to formulate a plan for the rest of the area, it was discussed that the rest of the wetlands to the north of the subdivision plat that's on the screen would be retained as conservation or open space for the neighborhood. So there isn't a significant amount of opportunity to develop more housing beyond what's proposed, but there is some additional vacant land adjacent to Union Street, to the east of Union Street, which will also become developable as our regulations on historic preservation requirements on the convent expire. None of that's going to change the layout or the format of the Sisters of St. Joseph convent, but there is about an acre of additional land that could be built on. So we're expecting somewhere between 12 to 14 additional residential units with this subdivision plat, in addition to the Door to Dreams project, with opportunity to build another 6 to 8 residential units along Union Street.
Okay. I guess one last question then. Part of the staff report talks about how the consideration was made long-term. Are the taxes generated by this type of development going to be able to sustain the infrastructure that's put in? And I guess I was wondering if there's a city policy requiring or defining how that how those development costs are calculated, and if they're a plus or a minus, and if there isn't a policy, should there be? So I guess how does that taken into account now?
Sure. There are several policies within the comprehensive plan that dictate that we should be as fiscally responsible with new development like this as we possibly can be, and that the new development should pay for the infrastructure costs or the ongoing infrastructure costs. But as an internal policy for the community development staff, when there is new developments like this that are also city initiated, we work with our engineering and public works team to get as accurate of an estimate as we can for the infrastructure costs and backpedal to figure out what our needed tax revenue is to meet that. So there probably should be a more formal policy for that, but right now that's how we're operating, is trying to make sure that whatever taxable property or taxable value we're generating will take care of the
Good. It seems like a nice thing to include in our comp plan discussion.
And Commissioner, just so you understand too, it's not just the infrastructure costs, but it's things like emergency services.
Right.
Right. So all of those costs are
a bundle of stuff. Right. Yep.
To make a comment off that too, and staff internally had a discussion prior to bringing anything forward for Door to Dreams on whether we would like to bring forward 2 separate plats, one for Door to Dreams and one for the rest of the plat, or if we wanted to bring it together. And part of that conversation was bring it forward together, as if it was just Door to Dreams, you could never make the argument that the infrastructure will be paid for through that development. Part of the reason we needed to look at the rest of the area to the west and include what we did was to get to that break-even point to ensure that we are not losing our shirts, for lack of a word.
Well, I guess as an aside, I assume that there's always a decision to be made how the city wants to invest its money, right? If we make a contribution toward having an affordable housing project, this is another type of that purposeful decision of, whether you want to create something that perhaps will cost money long-term, but you're knowing going in that you will. But I do appreciate that the goal is, for fiscal responsibility to the greatest extent possible. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Awesome work.
Any other questions? Commissioner Rice?
Yeah, maybe just a little additional clarity. You said the city currently owns the majority of this parcel. Does the parcel north of what would have been the 3rd Street right-of-way, is that also currently owned, or is that still yet to be purchased?
Everything in red on that one map that you had in front of you?
Yeah.
Right.
Everything in red is owned by the city.
Right, so there's a small section immediately north of the
3rd Street?
3rd Street right-of-way that is
Yep.
not yet owned.
So that is still city-owned, yep, or that is city-owned.
And on the north side of 2nd, or Maria as well?
Where the mayor's cursor is on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
city.
already city.
That's
the
already.
road. We put a,
Yeah, there already is a road constructed
There already
there.
is a road there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I guess just why in this plat is Academy and 3rd not connected?
Great question.
Great question. If we had the wetland delineation map up on the screen, you'd see where the wetlands are. That we would not propose a connection between Academy Avenue and 3rd Street because there is a wetland in that area.
I will say this has been a multiple version plat that staff and Rattler has gone through. We had our idealistic version first and foremost. We saw how much that impacted wetlands. That was scrapped. We came forward with a idealistic version that took into account the wetlands, and then we started to account for stormwater. That idea was scrapped.
Sure.
I'm using that generically. There was probably 5 of
Yep.
those versions in between. So ultimately, we landed on this as it was the option that got us to breaking even on infrastructure cost. It had the least impact to wetlands as physically possible, even if it meant we weren't connecting 2 roads, is what it is. It also accounted for all the stormwater requirements that we had to account for from DNR standards. We also factored in density and also try to just overall subdivision design. And this is ultimately what we came up with, but many factors went into looking at that.
And those 2 roads, so Academy and 3rd Street, that effectively dead end, we don't need any designated delineation for emergency service turnarounds at this point?
Yeah, we factored that into through our discussions, working it to put in hammerheads to allow those trucks to turn around, garbage trucks,
Yep.
EMS, fire.
And there's appropriate space to accommodate that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
any other questions, commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the preliminary subdivision plat as.
Thank you, Commissioner Schuler. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Further discussion? Additional comments from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? You will see this again in the near future, hopefully. Item number 5 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Partnering Together of Portage County to rezone portions of the property located at 2854 Church Street from R2 Single Family Residential District to the B4 Commercial District. And Adam, let's talk about why that's needed.
Yeah, so I'll give an explanation of both this agenda item and the next one. Obviously, I'm sure the mayor will remind commissioners that each request before you has its own unique reason. So obviously, just making sure that the context of the deliberation is as narrowly tailored as possible to the request. So this first item is to rezone this portions of the subject property from the R2 Single Family Residence District to the B4 Commercial District. This goes with the overall request to operate the overnight shelter on the subject property. In terms of land use regulations for this land use, it is allowed via a conditional use permit within the B4 Commercial District. However, it is a prohibited land use within the R2 Single Family Residence District. Essentially, the front half of the parcel, so where the building, current building is located, that's zoned B4 Commercial. The back half is zoned R2. My hunch as to why it currently has a split zone designation is that decades ago, the city allowed the combination of two parcels that were not zoned the same. Shouldn't have happened, so this rezoning is in part to remedy that so we don't have split zoned parcels in the future. So this segment of Church Street is, I guess, is maybe one area of the city that's a little bit disjointed in terms of existing land use versus what our zoning map intends for this area. So our zoning map highlights all parcels abutting Church Street as that B4 commercial, as does our future land use map designates this area for commercial office multifamily development. This is just the one area where you do have obviously a mix of commercial and residential and institutional uses within this portion of Church Street. So the portion, or the purpose of this request is to really rezone this back half to the B4 commercial district. The proposed parking that's located within this current R2 zoning designation is needed to operate the shelter use, and you need to have the same zoning designation as a shelter to allow that. So staff would recommend approval, would view that it's consistent with the city's future land use map.
Just for clarification, Adam, the front part of the parcel is already zoned B4, correct?
Correct.
So the building, the structure, if this lot were split, currently would allow for a shelter.
Via conditional use.
Right, via conditional use, right. The reason we're doing this is because the back half, which is adjacent to the alley, at some point in the past, probably had a house on it, and the city allowed it back then to just combine the parcels without double checking the zoning.
Yeah,
so
gotta love it.
We find there's still all the time things like this pop up. So before we open the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from the commissioners? Okay, we're going to try and keep the testimony on topic for the rezoning request. We do have the conditional use request as our next agenda item, so if we could keep comments as close as we can to the rezoning request this time, I'd appreciate it. So I will open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on the rezoning request, step forward, name and address, please.
Sherry Hecker, 3050 Lindbergh, Stevens Point. So I've done some checking into the rezoning, and rezoning that to a commercial in a residential area will have a negative impact on the homeowners there on Henrietta Street. It will impact their property value, their ability to resell their homes, and their taxes. So, well, I understand half of that lot is for commercial, the front half. The back half is residential. And by doing this, you're having a negative impact on that neighborhood and those homeowners that live there. People have made comments that if you don't like the shelter, move. Well, when your house value plummets because of an undesirable condition in your neighborhood, you don't have the ability just to sell your house and move. So I ask that you guys take that into consideration, that you consider the homeowners and the property owners that are in that neighborhood that are going to be negatively impacted, and not punish them for a decision that was improperly made before.
Alyssa Huggert, 3050 Lindbergh Avenue. I'll start by saying that I was a volunteer at the warming shelter most of last season and part of this season. This information does pertain to the zoning. While I was there were several instances of an individual who I'll start by saying there's good and bad of every group of people, but there are reasons why I'm stating what I am. There had been several instances of an individual who was painting with their feces in the church bathrooms, making a mess of it. Nightly, there were several instances among several people who weren't cleaning up their garbage, their dishes, and stuff like that. So that definitely does raise some kind of concerns on how this is going to look outside. How are they going to treat this property if they're already not really respecting the property and the work the volunteers and the staff are doing, and they're not respecting the place that gives them a warm place to sleep at night, and food on the table? That it does raise concerns. I wholeheartedly agree that a shelter is needed. There is a problem of where I believe that is located. There's going to be issues. It's not fair to the community to have to deal with that. There are kids that are going to be in that area. There's a school crosswalk, whether it's how many ever distances away from the school, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like there's a crosswalk for kids coming from school. There's kids that live in the houses around there. There was also an instance where they would line up outside to go in during intake at night, and one of the guests had thrown a beer can or a beer bottle or something related to alcohol out in the bushes of the church because they didn't want to be seen with it, but they were drinking on their walk to the church to go in that night. And they couldn't be seen with it because they were afraid that they weren't going to be let in. And it's situations like that that is concerning. They also have a rule, which completely understandable, is if you're over a certain limit or you're not able to control your body under the influence of drugs, you are turned away from going into the shelter that night. Completely understandable. But now it's not downtown where there's less people at night. It's in a residential area where kids are sleeping to get ready to go to school for the next morning. It's, there are a lot of concerns. And being how as I have experience of being there, and I've seen these things, I hope that can, be information that's used and known of why people feel the way they do, and that these are legitimate concerns. These are things that have happened and can happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open.
Kevin Reuter, 3364 April Lane. My question would be, everyone knows that Church Street would be identified as a commercial street. Henrietta, I can't see how that can be, just because they're hooked up to one lot, how Henrietta Street can be identified by any ways or means a commercial street. Is there any discussion on that? I mean, just look at the street, it's residential.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open.
Hey everybody, my name is Larry Austin, and I live in Plover, but I work hand in hand with the homeless in Stevens Point, as well as a few other folks here. I get the concerns and stuff like that, but we have the Salvation Army. Where's it at? Residential neighborhood, right? No matter, we have CBRFs when they first started coming around. Where are we going to put those with special needs? I don't want those kind of people living in my neighborhood. You know what? As a recovering addict who was homeless at one point in his life, I am so grateful that I had somewhere to go at nighttime, right? And there's so much more to this whole big picture and stuff like that. There's going to have to be rules and regulations the same way that it is with the Salvation Army. I know firsthand, I have a job that I do as a vendor, and I have to go around and I have to pick up lots of stuff that people throw out at their curbs. It's just not the homeless, right? I do have to pick up the homeless stuff as well. right? That's part of my job. I don't like some of it, and I can show you pictures of certain things that I had to pick up when Shopko was getting torn down, right? But I think this is a good opportunity to be community, you know? I can share this with you too, and then I'll be done. We had 2 individuals this winter that both lost digits. We have a guy in the hospital right now. 2 Sundays ago had 3 toes amputated from frostbite. You know, no matter where they were trying to camp or stay afloat, they would get kicked out and kicked out and kicked out. You know, so I'm also concerned about what I read, that this is temporary housing and it's only at nighttime. So we need to figure out what we're doing for the rest of the whole day during the winter months. But I'm for where the shelter is. There's going to be a lot of things need to do. There's going to be the fences and everything like that, you know. So thanks for everybody's hard work.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open.
Danny Mercer, 299 Bills Drive. I don't want to try to teach the Planning Commission anything about zoning, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but just wanted to point out what I've seen from property values around a B4 specifically. The loss in a residential area is very, very minimal, if at all, simply because most of the times when you lose to a commercial property, it's because of industrialization, it's heavy traffic, vehicles, the machinery itself, the noise, things like that would detract from a property's value, but a small place that really is for someone to sleep overnight doesn't really seem to me to be able to have that impact, and also switching it to a B4 in that way really, in my opinion, again, isn't going to have any impact on people's properties around it, and I hope the commission understands that.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Anyone wishing to speak for the first time, come on up and offer that testimony. Anyone online? Public hearing remains open. I think we have someone. Deb?
This is Deb Knipple, 611 Sumery Avenue, and I would support the rezoning to B4 Commercial District so that we can move forward to operate the overnight shelter. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open.
My name is Alicia Reuter. I'm the one right next door to it, 2849 Henrietta Street. Is there any other options besides making it commercial if this is going through besides commercial? Where is it gonna, because I've already confirmed with the realtor that my value of my property of my house, which I was looking at selling within the next 2 years, that the value of my house is gonna go down quite a bit.
I'd like to know the name of the realtor because our assessor doesn't see that.
I can give it to you.
That'd be
And
great.
yeah, if I can send you an email of all of the things I've done my research on this. If I can bring you all like the witness statements, because a lot of people have come to me with different situations, which I'm waiting till the next portion of this discussion. But yeah, I did confirm with the realtor that my value of my property is going to go down, and it's funny because I was already looking at possibly selling my house before this all had come up. So is there does that affect your decision at all, like with different people around that? I mean, I'm right next door. Like I said last time, I'm 10 blades of grass right next to it. And then are you guys looking at, is that going to change the value of my house too? Or we talked about like the fencing and stuff, and maybe that's for the second portion of this discussion, but because I'm like this far apart from the property. And then what's going to take effect, like before they would do all the lawn care on that one side. I don't know exactly how the zoning of that property is, who does the lawn care, because I have a chain link fence right there, but I don't know who takes care of the trees or anything, if that's my property or the zoning of that property. That's a lot of the questions that I'm going to have as well.
Okay.
So, because there's going to be my fence, and if you guys are putting a fence up as we discussed, and then there's going to be that huge gap, who's going to maintain all that property? Is that going to be rezoned?
So the simple answer is your fence on the property line?
I mean, I got a permit when I got it done, so I'm not really sure. I'd have to look at it. But how it worked prior to with that building, who owned it prior, they handled all that, but when we discussed it, you were putting the fence up before the trees. So are you rezoning all that property within my fence? And
The intention, and again, we're deviating from the public hearing.
yeah, and
Everybody's okay
I
with
can
that.
wait. I mean,
Okay,
it's not,
but The simple answer is, the intention would be to have the fence on the property line.
okay.
If your fence is on the property line, they
Okay.
would literally abut each other, or maybe one
Okay.
would, they'd talk to you about taking down the chain link, putting up the solid fence, but the fence could go on the property line, that's where it should go.
Okay.
And then if let's say hypothetically, if your fence is 2 feet in from your property line, you would still be responsible for everything on your property.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, because however my agreement with the person next to me, whoever owned the
And
building
there's
prior, so.
there's a reasonable chance that
Yeah.
you could work it out
I mean,
with partnering
yeah.
together.
And if I bring those documents to you, I mean, is this after the meeting still going to be considered, where if I bring you documents stating that, I mean, our
Council will still
property
have to
value-
approve everything.
Okay, so this is not a for sure right now?
Correct.
Okay, because there's been a lot of talk, and I came here not knowing the other side of things. I went and had a meeting with people on the board for partnering, so I wanted to see from their side of things, and I received confirmation from that end that you stated under the table that this has all been approved already, and this is just a process.
They said that, they're lying.
Okay, and I can provide that information as well, but I've been told that this has all been a done deal underneath the table, that you're just doing what you need to do for protocols, and so that's all my concerns, is that I want to make sure that there's not.
I assure you it's not.
Okay, so
I
this
don't
is
even
not
get
a
to
for
arbitrarily
sure
make
thing,
those
this is not
decisions.
for sure happening right now until.
I don't even get to make the decision, so.
Okay.
There has been a tentative verbal agreement for the purchase of the property.
Okay,
but
and
all
maybe
of those are
maybe
conditioned.
that I misunderstood
That
that in
could have
some
been
way.
it.
Yeah, but it just that it was that this is going to happen for sure, no matter, and that's
I assure
my
you
concern.
that is not the case.
Okay, because I don't want to. I mean, I've looked at when I went and did a meeting and had a discussion on it. There's a lot of things that are not organized with all this, and we can get into that to the next discussion. I mean, this is just about the rezoning, but I just want to confirm that my zoning of my property is not, the value's not going to completely plummet.
And I appreciate that. It would have been nice to have any sort of testimony beforehand, but if you can get it to the
Yeah.
Community Development Department.
Yeah, I already have it all written
And we'll make
up.
sure everybody on
Yeah.
the council and the commission gets it as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
My name is Bill Yetchits with Revelations Architects. We are partnering together, and in our plan that we submitted for the rezoning, we stated that we wanted to see all of the corners located in Hamina, Christensen, and myself found 5 of the corners, and the city came out and got the 6th one. There's like an offset where this lady's property that just talked, and it seems like
zoom in there so you can see that little offset where you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a 4-foot
5th and
offset,
6th.
and everything's not really very straight in there. And right at the offsets, there's some trees that are like 80 years old that are spruces that are just gigantic, makes it hard to see anything. And the other thing is that the property at some point, the fuzziness on the edges, somebody put together some old arborvitaes that have been trimmed 100 times. And right now, the arborvitaes seem to be on the property of the building in the back lot. And so that you could see the stake in the front of your lot, and then you could go back to where that offset is, and underneath those 2 big trees, there is 2 stakes, and they've actually, it was done, I think, in 2005, according to Mina, that it's been laid out, and I think your fence is totally on your property. And actually, we were not suggesting to put more fencing where the dense arborvitaes were, but she has a stretch of property, I don't know, maybe 40 feet of her property or something is directly open. And it would need some screening from parking there, and that some sort of fencing would be the best to do that. And on the north side, it's kind of funny because with our plan, it shows that we have parallel parking, and the fuzziness on the plan where that is all the trees have grown and fallen over, and there's like 4 inches of soil on top of the asphalt. So that our plan would be, if this would go ahead, is that we'd clean off those areas and then stripe the asphalt accordingly.
Okay.
And I think the other thing about this building is kind of unique, is it's kind of like a bombshell. It's there's very, very little opening anywhere in this building. That it's all solid masonry everywhere. The entrances to the property are, especially our handicap and major entrances, are all on the north side where the drive goes through on the north side of the building. So there would probably be very little that way. And actually, you know, from a practical standpoint, I don't understand, you know, the city has zoning ordinances and that we have to have parking, but for the use that we have, I don't know that everybody's going to have a car. You know, from what I understand, most of them have bicycles. You know, so that we were planning on putting a bike rack on the west side of the building, but I would say that because of the way the building is designed, it's has very little impact to its surrounding because all the windows have been closed up. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open.
Does that mean anybody can say anything?
Yes.
No matter if it's zoning or not?
Well, we want to keep it on zoning. If you're going to talk about the conditional use, that's the next agenda item.
Hi, Lori Gruba, 1032 Whiting Avenue. My concern is if these people are turned away in the evening, say they are on drugs or they're on alcohol, and they are turned away and there's no room for them or whatever the reason, where are they going to go? They're going to be loitering the neighborhood. And how high will this fence be around the area? And will they be able to, if they don't want someone to, I would imagine you're going to have cameras around there, but if they want to get away with whatever they're doing, are they going to be able to hide by just going on the outside of the fence, cutting through people's yards and sneaking around, you know, our residences? And the zoning, does it just affect the people as far as taxes and the lowering of the properties, mostly the people on Henrietta Avenue? Because the picture that you have here includes people even on Water Street. So how does, I'm kind of not understanding what the 4 properties here are on the Water Street in the blue highlighted areas. Because that's on the next block.
Oh.
She's talking about the notification letter for
the notification letter.
That's all that was.
That's just, yeah, we set a diameter or a distance from the request, and those are the people that get letters. We obviously can't send a letter to everyone in the city for every request. So we have zoning ordinances that talk about how far away we contact residents when there's a zoning change request.
Okay. Okay, it's just my concern as to the loitering that's going to be done, cutting through yards. Even during the day, if someone had mentioned where are they going to go, what's the plans for them? If they can't be there during the day, I've got people going past my house continuously dragging suitcases and backpacks, and that's my concern now. And they're just kind of staring into space, looking all around. And then have gone on a walk past Ruth Gilfrey, and I see homeless people last year that were actually tents set up on the green circle, and it's like, if you give them, will more come? You know, that's just going to open up a can of worms, so.
Thank you. Because I know it's been brought up. In talking with Steve Shepro, our city assessor, every value is by parcel. And one parcel should not affect the value of the other parcel. And it shouldn't affect taxes. So if there's evidence to the contrary, I'm telling you what our professional has told us, because we get this question frequently that, oh my God, it's going to affect my property taxes. But he has found no evidence that the zoning of one parcel will affect the zoning of another, or the assessment of another parcel. Public hearing is still open. So again, it's for the zoning request.
My name is Beth Crotto, and I'm at 649 Walker Street. My question is, you said that rezoning it isn't going to affect it, but it is, because you're rezoning it for a homeless shelter.
You're affecting that parcel. The rezoning doesn't affect adjacent parcels.
But it's going to, because of the fact of, we know there's going to be trouble.
All I'm saying is what our professional assessor told me.
I don't know what he's looking at, but when you have a homeless situation, it's going to affect people's properties. Who's going to want to live around it?
But the zoning doesn't affect that. The use may.
Okay, so, okay.
Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. For those of you getting sick of hearing me say that, we have to do it by law 3 times after the last speaker. So with that, seeing no one else wishing to testify, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, thoughts, comments, questions, or a motion on the rezoning request?
I got a question for a little clarification. We need the rezoning because it would be the parking area back there that wouldn't fit the R2 existing zoning class?
Yeah, because the area where a parking lot is located has to be zoned appropriately for the use that parking lot is serving. A temporary housing facility like this is prohibited under the R2 district, so that's why the rezoning is needed.
So it's guilty by association, essentially.
Yeah, someone screwed up whenever, when the parcel got merged.
I'm just wondering, could it stay the R2 and still have this parking lot? But no, it can't, because it's associated with the other.
Although we're going through a zoning code rewrite, so if you have suggestions.
Take that under consideration.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I guess kind of a question, comment, maybe back to city staff. I don't have the full city's zoning map in front of me. Obviously, this block and presumably several other nearby blocks, at some point we're heavily residential. Is the B4 zoning, is that pretty typical of a lot of these kind of arterial street properties?
Yeah, basically the entire stretch of Church Street has the B4 commercial district. There are some exceptions of some scattering of parcels that have a multifamily zoning designation. You can kind of see on the far bottom end of that zoning map, you can see that blue, pink shaded color. That would be the multifamily 2, the R5 multifamily 2 residential, but by and large, the Church Street as an arterial road, likewise our other arterial roads have that B4 zoning designation.
Mm-hmm. And I guess follow up to that, is it at all unusual to you that B4 abuts R2 in this situation? Do we see that a lot, or is there typically, when adjacent to residential, is that residential use usually more intensive or more dense in other scenarios?
So there's a fair amount of examples like this elsewhere in the city. This Church Street corridor is one. Stanley Street corridor is another that comes to mind. Ideally in areas where ideally as part of the zoning code rewrite, we would try to polish it up for the city as a whole in areas that need it. But yeah, it's not unique to just this area.
Okay.
Commissioner Schuler.
Matt, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good for the moment, yeah.
I had a question about if someone came in for this, the B4 part of this property, and wanted to introduce a permitted use, would they be able to use the parking lot without rezoning it to B4, as it is kind of an existing, would it be a non-conforming use as it is now? And if someone wanted to just bring in a permitted use, would they be able to use the parking lot as is once, I guess, they dug all the stuff off the asphalt?
Most high probability not. They would still have to go through the same rezoning process. The only scenario where a rezoning process would not be needed is if there is a commercial use that's permitted by right both in the R2 district and the B4 district. So, it's very, very slim, but theoretically a church, a school would be those types of uses that a rezoning wouldn't be needed, but by and large, any sort of commercial use would have to go through the same process because there is the requirement for on-site parking.
Okay, and is the fact that there's been a lapsed use the reason why anything that comes forward now would have to have a rezoning for the parking area?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any additional questions, commissioners? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve rezoning with staff recommendations.
Thank you. Seconded by Arnson.
Second it.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, maybe just a comment. I mean, I think it is a little bit of an unusual situation, but it sounds like it's a somewhat unusual building. It really doesn't make sense to revert back to a residential zoning, if we're trying to eliminate the split zoning. And so it's just kind of logical, despite being kind of an unusual situation. So yeah,
I run across these occasionally, probably more than I'd like to say. But that just happens.
Yeah, that, and I guess it's congruence with the intention of the future land use map is, again, long-term trajectory of the entirety of that block again into the theoretical distant future makes some logical sense.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the rezoning request. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 6 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Partnering Together Portage County for a conditional use permit to operate a temporary housing facility on the property located at 2854 Church Street with the parcel identified in your packet, consistent with Chapter 23.02, Sub 1, Sub F, Sub 3, Sub F. And Adam?
All right, so on the next slide, you can see the proposed site plan submittal. I know a few of these items were mentioned during the last public hearing, but just to provide a quick background. So there is the parking stalls that are proposed in the rear of the property, and I echo the comments raised by one person during the public hearing that this might be a scenario where our parking lot requirements and our zoning code may be in conflict with the practical use, the practical necessity for providing on-site parking. But there is the minimum required number of on-site parking that's needed based off of the 1 stall per 300 square foot ratio as required in our code. There is the usage of existing landscaping as well as new landscaping that would be proposed to provide that screening between the adjacent properties, as well as the installation of 6-foot tall privacy fencing on the north and south lot lines. I guess lastly, you do note on the next slide that there is the proposed floor plan, just to provide more of a conceptual outline of how the use within the building will be occupied as such. That has been reviewed by the architects working with the applicant as well as our city inspection staff. You can see the conditional approval letter from our inspection staff included in the agenda packet. There are a couple conditions included in the staff report as part of the recommendation to approve. This would be number 1, to have a maximum building occupancy of 35 persons. That includes both those residing in the facility as well as staff and other professionals. Number 2 and 3 are both conditions that were also applied to the warming shelter over by Frame that's been operating over the last several years. That number 2, that guest rules shall be created and administered as part of this approval. And then number 3, that there will have to be at least one professionally trained staff member to provide supervision of the facility at all times when it is in operation. Staff believes, at least subject to the review standards for the conditional use permit, that there are enough safeguards provided that those conditions are applied as part of the conditional use permit request.
And Adam, these conditions are, other than the occupancy being a little different, are the same as the existing shelter, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Do you want to touch on the standards of review quickly before we get the public hearing rolling?
Yeah.
Your findings?
Yeah, there's 14 review standards in total. Some of them don't apply because there's a few of them that apply just to multifamily residential uses. Really, these address the full scope of, I guess, what ought to be considered for any conditional land use. Items like consistency with the zoning map and future land use map, talking about the architectural appeal of the building, as you can see within the elevation plans included in the packet. Items such as access, internal traffic flow, stormwater management on the site. It really takes a comprehensive look and I think does a pretty good job, even knowing our zoning code is 50+ years in age. It does a nice job of taking more of a comprehensive look at things.
Thank you. Commissioners, any clarifying questions before I open the public hearing? Okay, Commissioner Rice.
Yeah, maybe just one, at the kind of top of this report, it is noted that temporary housing is prohibited in the R2 district. Not that the zoning code gives justification kind of for or against permitted use or prohibited use, but are there things that you would assume or suppose would have prevented this from being or making it a prohibited use in an R2 district?
I would say big things would be items like access and the parking accommodations that are required for that type of land use. Typically, a R2 zoned lot is smaller in nature, and because of the minimum on-site parking requirements, there inherently has to be a larger lot size needed, which is typically found in your commercial zoned lots. So I would say that really parking and access in and out of the lot would be the big 2 reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll open up the public hearing. Public hearing on the conditional use. If you declare that open. If you have testimony on the conditional use request, step to the lectern, please, and provide that testimony.
I'm not against a housing shelter, or whatever you want to call it. But I do have some questions.
Chief, I'm sorry, for the people who are taking the minutes, could you please provide your name, even though
I was here already? Kevin Ruder, 3364 April Lane. I do have some questions in reference to the business plan. I don't know if there was a business plan given out more specifically. It was said in the past that it was going to be closed at 6 in the morning. It wasn't going all the way around, and I'd have some concerns about that. We have the architect said that there's an access door from the south, but is there egress and ingress available elsewhere for people who may be physically challenged that will be using the facility? And that's it for now.
Thank you. I'll see if I can get those questions answered after the public hearing. Public hearing remains open. If you know you're going to speak and you're able to, you could probably get in queue.
Jenny Burton, 5718 Sandpiper Drive, Stevens Point. I've had the unique experience of working with homeless people with Laundry Love and with One Big Tent for a while. I have to confess, maybe 3 years ago and before, I would see people gathering at the library and at the Franciscans, and I would say, oh, those people. And it kind of give me the creeps. Well, after working with the homeless people in a limited capacity, everyone I worked with, and there's probably 20 neighbors on a shift, and they all have their stories. One person said to me, well, a young man who's going to Spash comes with his mom, and he took me aside and he said, can I ask you a question? And I said, of course. And he said, I'm currently working at Hardee's, and I would like to earn a little more money if I could, but I don't feel comfortable checking out Walmart just because they have a better per hour rate. I've only been at Hardee's for 2 weeks, and I don't feel right about that. And I thought, here's a young man who's got his ethics at the forefront of his mind. He's not taking something just because it could give him more money. He wants to do the right thing. And I could tell numerous stories about people just by listening to them. I didn't need to judge them. I'm not in their shoes, but I want to stand by them. And I think they deserve to have, any person that goes to this facility has a set of circumstances. Most of them don't choose to be homeless. And they're in a situation that they need help. And I just want to assure you that the neighbors I've met, I would be fine living next door to them. And in my heart, it took just saying, okay, try this. Just try it. Just see what it's like. And same thing with One Big Tent. That was a little more, anyway, but I had the same kinds of experiences in the end. My conclusions were the same. So I urge you, when you think about this, that I believe, I've been in support of this, and I applaud the whole process. I know it's complicated, but I applaud you for doing this. And I can't see the future, but if I were in your shoes, if I were your neighbor next to this thing, this wonderful shelter, I would not be afraid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Austin, Plover, Wisconsin again. I'm going to try to make this as quick and simple as possible. And please, by no means do I want to upset anyone. But for this shelter here, a couple doors down, what's a couple doors down? Oh yeah, tobacco outlet. What do they sell there? Smokes, booze. Well, I'm a recovering person. Why should that be in the community that I go through, the community I work in? You know, Church Street, Division Street, how many businesses are throughout that whole community, right? All over. We live in a college town, correct? I guarantee you, guaranteed, you go down Briggs, College Avenue, what are you gonna see there? Cigarette butts, booze bottles, cans, whatever, right? Garbage, all the time. What happens downtown on the square? What do? We go downtown on Wednesday nights, listen to music, and 75% plus people are doing what? Outside in public. Drinking, smoking, same with at the park. Kids everywhere. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Jennifer Hall, 2200 Rice Street. My question is the size of the facility and fire ordinance, because you've said 35 people total, including staff. last meeting, I could have sworn you said that there's at least 100 homeless in Stevens Point.
No, I don't have any of that information, and I don't remember the numbers ever being 100.
Okay, somewhere I heard that it's 100. So my question, if this facility is only going to sleep 22 people, what's going to happen with the rest of the homeless? Because you're going to enact the no camping ordinance, so those other people, they're going to get fined and they have nowhere else to go. I don't feel this facility is right. It's too small. We need something bigger. It's in a bad spot, residential community. I mean, do you not have any other options? I mean, they have so many services that they have access to, but they're all scattered everywhere. Do we not have a location where everything is just one central hub, where they can do their laundry, sleep, have a spot to hang out during the day, have their counseling services, their rehab services, maybe a little basic medical? Do we not have one spot where they can just exist? So that's
Thank you.
my concern.
Sherry Huggert, 3050 Lindbergh, Stevens Point. I wrote Adam. Adam, you've got a couple letters, a couple things from me. I have asked you to preserve those as evidence because I have a feeling this is going to go south. And I'm asking that this be preserved as well. Safety is a number one concern. So in regards to the homeless, please don't get me wrong. I do agree that we do need a homeless shelter. We do need resources, as there is in Wausau. Wausau has the Bridge Street mission, where they have a 24/7 shelter where all services are centrally located. I think Stevens Point needs something similar to that. Moving them farther away from the resources is doing them a disservice. Safety concerns, I'm not going to beat this with the dead horse. My daughter was a volunteer there. There was a safety issue that was brought up last October. She wrote Greg Hansel, who's right back there in the corner, partnering together. He admits he's not running the shelter, as it's advertised to the whole community. It's SPCO. And when there's a safety concern, he says, not it. WESA was notified last October of the same thing. Not it. The police chief was notified. Not it. Who's it? WESA notified her today, responded to her today, 4 months too late. Who is going to be responsible when something happens? The citizens have voiced concerns. I've heard everything from, we're going to call the police at every infraction. What's that going to do to our police services? Then I've heard, we're going to take matters into our own hands. So if my dog gets loose and I'm out trying to find my dog, am I going to get shot thinking that I'm a homeless person? You have the messes that they leave behind. You have that now in a residential neighborhood. There was, I think last week, an issue where the police were called to the shelter due to 2 people detoxing from meth or withdrawing from meth. They were kicked out. What?
That was a junction.
No.
I was here in Point.
Larry, please.
So
Let her testify.
They get kicked out. There's no transportation services at night. Where are they at? They're in our neighborhood. So this isn't a pick on our neighbors, let's all feel sorry pity party for them, because there are people who are down on their luck who really do need a helping hand. I'm all about helping them. There are people who are disabled who don't make enough to be able to afford housing on disability. I'm all about helping them. The problem that we have here is that there's the bad apples who are just using the system. They know how much they can drink and then walk away from the bar and still get in. They are using these services and not doing anything to better themselves. They're the same ones that are painting with feces. They're the same ones that are creating problems all over the place. Those are the ones now that are going to be littering and loitering in our neighborhood. All because you don't want them downtown. When we had the public listening session, WESA admitted this was just to move them out of downtown. There is no change. The services that are being offered have been offered for years. There is no additional services being offered. There is no change at all.
There's no change to the hours of the shelter, nothing. It's just a physical move to get them out of downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open. I want to remind everybody that shooting someone, whether they're homeless, walking the dog, or otherwise, is still very much frowned upon.
Alyssa Huggert. First, I want to say that I am very happy for you, Larry, of the life that you were living. I'm very proud of you. I know how much work and dedication it goes into getting through an addiction, and I very much recognize that. Your experience does matter, and I do appreciate you sharing that. And to touch on that a little bit, my entire childhood, even before I realized it, was affected by addiction. And so I do kind of know, I guess, like, from that trauma, that has kind of given me the capacity to, like, yearn and hope for, like, someone to overcome the addiction, to choose you over that. And so that has affected the amount of love and care I have for individuals struggling. I've also just come to learn, you know, and it came 26 years too late, is you can't love someone into recovery. And that's still hard to accept. As far as the Salvation Army goes about it being in a residential area, it's not right up against houses. There is space from the building and other houses around it. It is also by the YMCA. The Salvation has rules to follow, and there are guests that are just not ready to accept those rules. The warming shelter does have more lenient rules, and the Salvation Army is more strict. So the guests that even get over to the Salvation Army in that area to stay the night were the ones that were wanting to follow the rules. And the ones that were following the rules to have a place to stay tended to be more grateful and respectful of the area. And that's kind of my point on that situation there. I would like to know, I'm pretty curious actually, of if it's documented of the number and the nature of the police calls made from the Salvation Army, from guests versus the warming shelter. I would be very interested to hear that. And then I also want to express, I have done outreach on Sundays starting last spring and summer. I didn't do it for the full summer, but I was there for several instances, and I do know that there is a difference between handing them a meal on the weekend and then also having them come into the shelter and expecting them to follow rules. While very lenient at the warming shelter, it is different. There is a difference in experience on that situation. Never had an issue with handing them meals. Never felt threatened or anything like that. You know, they're pretty grateful, but when you do have rules to follow, that does kind of, I guess, bring out some issues that could arise at the shelter or in those situations. Let's see. The issue isn't just the location, but the organization running the shelter. There isn't a lot of accountability being taken for issues that are happening at the shelter with leadership, and because of the location, it is especially concerning with who is running it and how they are operating the situation. As I had kind of discussed the last meeting I went to, there were police calls made last season, a significant amount compared to this season. Being a part of the president or vice president and the director running the warming shelter this season, I was part of conversations in which they had made it very clear that they were not wanting to call the police excessively this season. I mean, I would imagine you wouldn't want to do that anyway. That's kind of wasting resources. But there were instances of violence and such this season. Kind of hearing about some of the experiences that staff were having that I wasn't there for, I'd be like, yeah, I'd call the police for that. But they didn't, because they're under new directorship. Where last season, an individual who should have had the police called on him for his behavior a few times had stayed until a comment was made to Michelle where he called her shorty. And then that put us at risk because the man's already violent. And so you kick him out for that. That was kind of wasting police resources. As far as the email from Mike today, it was not responded to until today about the situation and the safety incident that I had in November. And I expressed my frustration with you on that, for sure. He did say that, the city is not going to be involved in politics around the shelter. It's up to if there's an ordinance that's broken, conditional use broken, then the law could get involved. But the city's putting taxpayer money on this building, right? So they're involved, but only on some things, not everything. You got to choose. Are you going to be involved or are you not? As far as that goes, aside from having proof of the current director trying to get me to persuade the mayor and former police chief, Cuso, to remove Tiffany Mallory from her directorship of the warming shelter, I also have messages of when Michelle was supposedly meeting with Louisa on multiple occasions, starting in the early spring, around April or May of 2025, and going over plans and possible locations for the shelter. Long before Tiffany was even removed from her director position, even known that this was going on, this was a plan. Louisa was involved. Greg Hansel was involved. And I was also involved under a different interpretation of what was actually going on. I have also been notified multiple times, and I had experienced Michelle denied donations last summer for outreach. One of the former staff members of the warming shelter had found out about her doing outreach and had asked, is there anything I can help you with, anything I can do? And she said no. Meanwhile, they set up a GoFundMe page asking for donations because they needed more food for outreach. She picks and chooses who she accepts donations from. And I've heard this from multiple different people. I've also heard from individuals, or an individual who had offered to write grants for the shelter and Michelle, volunteering their time to do so. She said no. Why? I mean, wouldn't a charity who want to help a specific group actually want that help being done? They're like picking and choosing who can do what and when. What is the goal? Because it's not to help these people. If you're denying them some things because you don't like the people providing them, you're not having the goal of helping the people. As far as staffing concerns go, Michelle can't currently staff the shelter properly right now. What is she going to do when we have a new shelter? It's supposed to have more people in it. How is she going to staff them? She started her shelter on November 1st of the season. By November 20th, 3 staff were gone. And she fired another one after that. And then as far as not passing judgment on these individuals, this isn't judgment. This is real experiences that I've had. These are things that have actually happened and things that can still happen. It's not judgment. I love a lot of these individuals, and I've expressed every time I've spoken, or at least as a whole, that I have a lot of love for these individuals. I do. But I'm also living in reality. I have this experience. I'm not pushing an agenda of whatever corruption's going on behind the scenes or any of that, of how everything is happening. There's some questionable information going on. So, you know, aside from that, like, I've experienced what's going on. I'm not pushing an agenda. This is what is real. There are good and bad people. There are people that want help, that will do good. There are people who don't. And it's not one side or the other. This is the real information. But I do love these individuals. Yes, I do. But these are real concerns. And you kind of just have to take that information how you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
Greg Ansel, 3524 Regent Street, with Partnering Together. I just wanted to clarify a couple comments. In January, we had the warming center at Frame, and we had Salvation Army, which can take 30, and the warming center could take 20, and the crisis center can take people, abuse victims, families. And we need all those spaces. We don't have that now because the weather's changed. That's what this will do. The other thing, a comment was made about, there's no other services. We are providing services. We're in the process of hiring a case manager who will work individually with people, not just at the warming center, but who come to the Hope Center. We'll be hiring a director there. One Big Tent is there. Noble Clinic will be there. So we have a number of things that we're doing. It's not just having a space. It's also providing support and the things they need for that. So
thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Okay. Seeing no one else wishing to testify, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Before I bring it back to the commission, I feel we need to get a few things aired out. The Salvation Army numbers, I don't have those, but I can get those. I'll make sure and have those distributed before council. I know I'm meeting with three. There were three. 3 calls to the Salvation Army since the beginning of the year. Thank you, Chief. I know we were talking about getting those numbers. I can tell you that I got numbers for 2003, which is the most recent that I had. The number of calls to the Frame Memorial Church and Warming Center was 9 for 2023, and that placed it about 103rd out of all of the calls for service. They have increased. So the most recent data was from the first of the year till the now, but it is still not even in the top 10. As a matter of fact, it is tied with the number of calls with Madison Elementary School. There were some alarming ones, and that data is available publicly. I will make sure and get the ones for the Salvation Army for the same time frame, but the calls for service really haven't been that high. And talked about this email that was sent back in November. The email started out, and I'm paraphrasing, I wanted to make you aware of what's happening at the warming center. There wasn't a call to say, do something about it, call me back so we can talk about this. So there was no response asked, there was no response given. I forwarded it to the police department in case they saw anything that might be charge-worthy, and that's where it was left. Anyone, anywhere, if there is a crime being committed, you should report it. To say that you're not going to do it because you're taking up police resources, the chiefs in the back there, I can tell you that that is not the case. That's what they're there for. Call them. When I mentioned in my email response today about getting involved in the politics, there's a little bit of that tonight. Some like Tiffany's, some like Michelle, some like cheeseburgers, some like hamburgers. We're not getting involved in the he said, she said. If there is evidence of something happening that is a crime, pass it on and we will address it. But until that happens, we're not going to get involved in, I like this one, I said this one did that. Oh, there's things going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. And there may be, but if we don't know about them, there's nothing we can do to address them. We have the evidence there as far as the police calls, and that's what we have to go by. The city also didn't remove Tiffany Mallory from her directorship. I don't know where that even came from. The city had nothing to do with it. It's my understanding that the church at the time said that they no longer wanted to house the shelter if Mrs. Mallory was in charge. If that is wrong, then I will be corrected, and I'll wait for that. But that is the summation of some of those testimonies that you heard earlier. With that, Chief, I'll give you an option if you wanted to speak on any of this. We have Officer Solis in the back, who is our community resource officer now. I can tell you that a big chunk of this was the agreement that, and the council has already approved this, that the no camping ordinance will take effect the day the shelter opens. So when there is an alternative for people, camping and the like will not be allowed in the city. And that has already been approved. So it's on a bus line. It is close to resources. There's a laundromat just down the road, grocery stores. Yes, the tobacco outlet is also in there, but so is a movie theater. So what you have before you is an option to do better than what we're doing now. If you have conditions that you want to place on here in regards to the rules, the occupancy, any conditions, that's what this is for. You will allow it based on the approved conditions. So commissioners, I will bring it back to you. What are your thoughts, comments, wishes? Yes.
I was looking at the staff recommendations, and I would like to add a condition or maybe change the wording on number 3, at least one professionally trained staff member shall provide supervision. I think you want to say at least 2 or at minimum 2. I think if you've got 33 homeless folks and one staffer, that person could easily get overwhelmed. So I'm thinking maybe we might want to say at minimum 2 or at least 2. Okay. And it wouldn't necessarily need to be professionally trained. It could be a volunteer and a professionally trained staffer. But at least minimum 2 people.
Yeah, there will be a minimum of 2 people at all times, but I'll let Mr. Hansel speak to that.
To have the liability insurance, you have to have at least 2 there.
Then I wonder why we don't just say that then, at least.
One professionally trained.
And one other person?
So let me ask you this.
Do we need that then?
Would you like to add a condition, let's say number 5, that a minimum of 2 staffing be on duty at all times?
You could say at least one professionally trained staff member and one other staff member, one other staff person, volunteer. Wouldn't have to be one other person.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of a way we could word that where it wouldn't be confusing.
Yeah, anybody?
How about this? A minimum of 2 staff shall be at the facility at all times when operation, one of which is professionally trained.
That sounds good.
You got that, Adam?
Yep. I think
that's a motion to amend. Right?
Well, we don't have a motion on the floor.
But we don't have to have a motion on the floor. You're amending what the proposal is.
Yes, okay, yeah, I would move then to amend number 3.
At least 2 staff members be provided at the facility at all times when in operation, at least one of which is professionally trained.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
So when you say staff member, to me, I hear getting paid.
Volunteer
One staff
person,
member
I don't know
and
who.
a volunteer or whatever, but when you say staff member, to me, I hear they're getting paid.
Okay. You should work for the city.
I don't know
We
how
have
many
staff members that don't get paid.
that work there.
No, that's a good point. So at least 2 people shall provide supervision of the facility at all times when operation. At least one must be a professionally trained staff member. How's that?
That sounds good. That just.
It's on the recording, you can listen to it
Just
tomorrow.
makes sure that there's going to be 2 people there.
Okay.
For safety.
All right, so
Got a good mind.
do we have a second to that?
Good head to fit it. Big head to fit it all.
Seconded by Schuler. Just discussion on that amendment only right now. Any questions there?
Does that seem reasonable?
I think it's reasonable. They're going to have 2 anyway.
Yeah.
But put it in a condition, because if any of those conditions are violated, that conditional use gets pulled and operations cease.
Is this a modification of existing condition number 3?
Yes.
Thank you.
This would take this is an edit or amendment to existing existing proposed condition number 3. right, did we just second on that? I'm going to second it.
You have a second on that.
Schuler.
Oh, Schuler seconded, okay. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Laura, did you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, now back to the original request as amended. Commissioner Schuler.
With that in mind, I would look at proposed condition number 4 and have staff change to city staff.
Good point. I think we can do that administratively. That was the intention.
Thank you.
So we'll just add that word as city. We don't have to actually vote on that one. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Beacom?
Yeah, I would just say that the comments made tonight are certainly valid. I don't think that anything that was said I wouldn't have thought myself if I lived in those areas. That said, there's probably more people that are residents of downtown district than there are in this direct vicinity. I don't think there is a good location for this. I think this might be the best bad location we have. And so in looking at what's offered and the fact that we've had groups that are coming together and work together, I think that that's a positive. I suspect that there are going to be challenges, and we've had challenges for a decade and a half. But at least this centralizes it. The one thing that I would say, and this is a little bit off topic, but I still believe we need some metrics for this issue in town. We don't know how many people, we don't know who's getting helped. And to the point made, this is city money that we're putting in it. I think there should be some accountability there with what are the results, what are we seeing?
Okay, so how about if we added a condition that they must provide annual or semi-annual reports, which include some of the data that you're asking for?
I would love to see that.
We can certainly do that. Okay, so if it's all right with you, we'd add condition number 5, that the operation of the shelter provide, you want annual or semi-annual?
I mean, I think annual is fine if it's needed more frequently, but at least an idea of how things are moving along. Because I do feel like we've got bad actors, but it's not just boiled down to bad apples.
Yeah.
And Mayor, sorry to cut you off. I guess what would be the mechanism once a report is submitted? Is this brought before you folks for review? Is this administrative?
Maybe
If
public
so,
protection.
What's the mechanism?
I think what would be best was that the operators provide it to the city, whether that's through my office, your office, someone's office, and we disseminate that to the Plan Commission and all of the common council.
Okay.
And of course, it'd be available to the public as well.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we're going to add that as condition number 5. We need a second on that. Is that a second, Commissioner Schuler?
Sure.
Okay, let's just talk about that amendment. Any discussion there? Any particular things you want to see? Because I agree, it'd be good to know how many people were served.
I mean, for as long
What
as...
issues were there? How can we,
Yeah, as long as we've had this going on in the community, I hear that a lot. I don't know how many people there are. I don't know how many people, I mean, we get rough ideas, and I'm sure that there are some privacy things that we're concerned about in sharing data, but at the same time, to really fix a problem, especially if we're throwing tax dollars at it, we need to know where we're starting at. We need to know how people are getting helped. We don't have any of the information, so we would have no way of saying that this is a success or a failure. And that probably will also help when people say, is this going to attract more people? We're going to know.
Thank you. On the amendment?
No, not yet.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, back to the original request as amended. Commissioner Schuler.
I'm not suggesting language for an additional condition, but it may turn into that. I just wanted a couple points I wanted to bring up. I think we have right now 5 proposed conditions that might make this acceptable. I think that we've heard a number of things that I think, in my experience over the years, there are certain types of things that are made into conditions for conditional uses, and the operation gets held accountable to those, and conditional uses are such that if there are violations of conditions, the conditional use permit can be pulled. And I guess some of the concerns I've heard have been Are there any expectations for allowing congregation either during or beyond the hours of residential use? I think that's something that can be addressed in the conditions if the expectations are. I know that one of them is to provide rules of conduct or whatever operation for it, but I think the city would be within its rights to say, okay, this is our expectations for what we will see on the property without micromanaging it. I think one of the general things is there an expectation that people, when it opens, when it closes, will people then need to just really move on off the property? The staff report itself says that ingress and egress is going to be through the front door so that people will be entering off of the main street and going back onto it. Because one of the concerns was people will wander through the neighborhood. If that's the general nature of getting in and out of the place, they would normally be directed to the street. Is that possible to make as a recommendation? I think having set hours of operation for when it will open, people can go in, and does it need to define the exact extent of the stay that people are going to be there so that the neighbors will know that this is the time when people will be expected to arrive, and at the time that it's over, are they expected to remove themselves from the property? I think that's something that needs to be considered as a consideration. Will there be any expectations for people to be allowed to be there beyond what are set as the hours of operation? I think the neighbors would want to know that as well. So I don't have language to propose that, but I think that those are important points that I think a conditional use permit can legally address.
And I believe you're absolutely right. I would submit, however, there are mechanisms in place that can cover issues. So my guess is that even if people are hanging out there during the day, as long as they're not doing anything wrong, nobody is really going to care too much. It's the same as if I have a couple of people over, it's trivia weekend's coming up, there's going to be a lot of people in my neighborhood. If there's problems, they should be addressed as they happen. We have a chronic nuisance ordinance that if there is a number of calls in a certain period of time that are proven warranted, there's an escalating feature in there that could eventually shut something down. We've really only used it primarily for bars and college rental houses, but it applies to everybody.
Well, I think that something becomes an issue because someone is doing something that is beyond what the rules of operation for the property are, right? So I think you have to set whatever reasonable rules can be for the acceptable use of the property. Again, and I don't have the language, but I think to me, those are the main points that really stand out as if Mike is looking for accountability in some form and metrics for what performance is for the operation. There should also be metrics for how within the anticipated operation of the property did they perform. And the whole point of having a review for a conditional use is to say, did they meet the conditions that we had in place? And again, it's not a question of micromanaging, but it's trying to say, what is reasonable to the operator and to the neighborhood? Because the whole nature of a conditional use is, yeah, this is a good use if conditions are met, right? So what is a reasonable? And part of me hopes that this can be resolved if it indeed does move forward between now and the council, because the council has the final say on it. And so they'll be the ones that are adopting the conditions for the conditional use, but I think those are the issues that at some point need to be addressed. For sure, letting people know when people are supposed to be there, when they're not supposed to be there. Are they anticipated you can hang out for a little while before the session starts or whatever you want to call it? Can you hang out for a little while afterwards? Those type of things. You know, are those the house rules that they're going to create, or are they things that the city can say, okay, as we look at how that's going to operate on the property, those are the things that we're going to say are okay and not okay?
I'm trying to find a way that something like that can work as a reasonable expectation. I'm not coming up with that. I may ask Mr. Hansel to come up here and talk about if they've encountered that already, but hypothetically, they're waiting at the bus stop on the sidewalk. Is that a violation?
They're in the public right-of-way at that point.
Okay, so on the property, do we have the ability, what I'm thinking of, I'll give you
Does
an
the city
example.
want to
There's car
have the
washes-
ability, is what I'm saying.
There's car washes that have the requirement that they cease operation at 9 o'clock. If there are people standing around the car wash at 9:20, is that a problem? And how would we regulate that on private property? Those are the questions that come up. There may be a way to do it. We need some time to come up with that and think about it.
Maybe to respond to that too, there are 2 handbooks currently, one for staff and one for guests, and they have the specific times of when they can arrive, when they can be there, what the expectations are when they're in the building and after they leave. So those are in place already.
Let me ask you this, and I'm probably putting you on the spot, and I apologize in advance, but the private property downtown, several business owners have alcoves to their entrance door, and they have contacted the police department saying no one has permission to be there when we're closed. Is that something that we could enact in the shelter on that property? Your hours of operation are X. Anyone there more than 30 minutes after we close does not have permission to be there, then could be trespassed?
Danny's on the board of SBCO. I would not have a problem with that at all. I would be fine with that.
Okay. And Danny Mercer is indicating they would not have a problem with it either.
So that'd be fine with us.
So is that something maybe you wanted to add as a condition then, Mr. Schuler? Is that, I don't
Out
know,
of those
is 30
1,000
minutes
words,
enough?
which are the 13 that are appropriate? Sure.
Okay, so the amendment would be that guests are not allowed on the property exceeding 30 minutes after the close of operations?
Well, do we think that that is a reasonable condition to put in place to help address some of the neighborhood concerns for what will happen on the property? I mean, the whole point of any condition is how can you make the operation as meaningful for the operators as possible and take into consideration what the concerns are of the neighborhood as best as we can.
Well, let me do this, and Alderperson Guthrie, I'll get to you in a second. We've got people here who have raised those concerns. Is anyone willing to come up and say what would it take to address that concern about people loitering? And we'll go with Alderperson Guthrie, unless you...
Sure, I'll raise briefly that it strikes me that to put in place something as strict as you may not exist on this property outside of these operating hours limits the ability of a county social worker to schedule a meeting, limits some other things that we might actually really want to happen as this facility and staff and the wraparound support of the humans served by the space evolve. And so while I appreciate the mayor inviting the neighbors to speak to how they would react to such a restrictive use of exterior space. Personally, I would posit that I would prefer to enact those rules for the property if and only if we establish that there's a problem once it's in operation, not initially so that these people can be as helped as possible with this new facility and the staff that are coming on. I'll yield.
Thank you, Alderperson. Just a comment on that, and I know the city attorney, I don't believe the city attorney's here, but I think he would advise, we wouldn't be able to add a condition to a conditional use after the conditional use is granted. We grant the conditional use, but then we can't say next year, oh, yeah, this is a problem, so we're going to add another condition.
Just say that that's one opportunity of the memorandum of understanding between the city before donating the money to this organization that would have been a great space for that.
Well, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that I guess to respond to the Alder's comment, part of the reasoning isn't to restrict. It's to try and figure out what is actually going on the property, because we've heard from a number of people, both before the meeting and during the meeting, and I'm not advocating for their position, but they have told us that they really don't know what's going on the property. And it's really the city's kind of responsibility to create a conditional use situation where as many things are known as possible, what the expectations are. And that's why I said I wasn't really suggesting language so much as saying there needs to be a way for the council, when you approve this, to be able to be accountable to the neighbors for what the expectations are for the operations on the property and whether or not they're meeting their responsibilities. What that looks like, I can't say for sure. I'm not sure that, making sausage on the run is the best way to do it, but I think that I understand what the folks are saying. I also understand that I know that the city going forward needs to be able to say this is how they are or aren't matching what we expected their operation to be. And I'm not advocating for a certain level of strictness or leniency. I just think that somehow that needs to be accomplished by the time this gets approved.
Thank you. All right, so if you could just speak, does that help? Is it not far enough? Is it too far? What are your thoughts?
I have a couple of things that I would like to raise questions on. And I'm sorry to put the new police chief on the spot here, but I kind of want some clarification on how this is going to be handled going forward, given like my experiences of like how things work at the shelter is warrants. When a guest has a warrant that's like not notified, their law enforcement is not notified about that, is how things were going previously. We would know that they would have warrants, and staff would not like bring it up, or sometimes they would bring it up and then nothing would be done when the officers come. And so I just kind of wanted to know about that. Secondly, the intake process, the guest would come through the door, meet the person at the door for the intake, go downstairs, then they would take off all of their belongings and they would be put into like a storage closet that would be locked before the end of the night. No one could go in there. Only 2 people could go in there at a time, so there weren't any issues. But we were aware of individuals having weapons, and they actually would not be wanded until after they took all of that off, including how this season worked as well. And so any weapons, anything like that, they would have to take off of them. But then we send them back out with the weapons. This is a residential area now. Like, yes, there are residents in downtown. Downtown is set up a little bit differently with the location of everything, but that is a concern that should have never happened. There should have been better restrictions on that or a different plan. But that is a concern that I would like to know, how is that going to go forward? But I know a lot of people don't know that, and so having the experience I have, wanted to give that information to the people who did not know that already. Thank you.
Thank you.
So back to the staffing and the time frame that they're allowed on the property. It was my understanding in one of the last meetings that, and Mike, you can elaborate on this, is that there was a discussion about there being a green space added there for them to have socialization and being able to gather in that space. So my question or my request would be that if there are no staff present, that there not be allowed to be any guests there hanging out in that space, and that's monitored. So once the staff leave, they have to be gone because nobody's there to supervise them. Back to the staffing, I know you were talking about one trained staff. I think there should be some definition as what is trained. What does that mean? What are the requirements for the training and where are they getting that training? What does that consist of? The other thing that I would like to see is that and this may help with the residential area, is that you have the accountability standards that Mr. Beacom was talking about, right? But numbers are only as good as the people that are providing them. So let's build a relationship with somebody in the neighborhood. Let's get somebody from the neighborhood to be on the board or to participate in that. So that way there is some neighborhood ability to fact check this information. That's all.
Thank you. That's actually a very good idea. Just instead of putting hours or half hours or whatever, and no one's allowed on the property if staff aren't present.
So to the alder's point, though, so you have one person come back, do you need two people then to do a case visit with that person that they're visiting with? Because now you have to have two people at all times?
In my mind, that'd be separate from the shelter operation.
That's how we have it written.
Because that would be during the day, during hours that they're not normally open.
We don't have operational hours on here.
So.
I understand what the intent is, but as you know, Alderperson, even the best intentions have a ripple effect, right? Alderperson Guthrie was talking about the accountability, and that would have been a great thing to have in the grant agreement. But not only did I not think of it or any staff, but 11 alders didn't think about it. No one from the public thought about it. So these things, that's why we talk about them.
Oh, we did bring that.
Commissioner Schuler?
I guess as I look at what we've been talking about and proposed condition number 2, it says guest rules shall be created and administered as part of this conditional use approval. I think some of the things we're talking about, someone used the term, I believe it was Mr. Reuter, operations plan. And I think that is a document that can try to address multiple issues that we've discussed so far. And I would say that could be made a condition between now and council approval, that an operations plan, I guess through discussions with staff, to cover as many of the high points that we've talked about so far, so that when it does go for consideration to council, that can be viewed in advance by the neighbors and part of the discussion for the approval for the property.
So how about if we do this, because all these things are going through my head at the same time. If the guest rules shall be created and administered as part of this conditional use approval, Mr. Hansel already mentioned that there's 2 handbooks, one for the guests, one for the users. What if we just add in there, guest rules shall be approved by staff, city staff? Is that then would allow you more flexibility?
Staff shouldn't care about how they do their business. Staff should care about how the actual business is going to operate on the property in large terms, right? And so I think if you don't want to use the term operations plan, but something to explain the hours of operation, the expectations for staffing, the ability to congregate outside, the times, the halo around when it's open. And I guess
Mercer, are
getting
you
to the
prepared to
alders.
speak to that at all?
I probably could. Yeah, I had something else to talk about, but yeah.
Okay.
If I could just finish for a sec.
Yeah,
you know, what the alder mentioned as something might happen in the future, well, let's try to include as many circumstances that might be going on the property if there are going to be social workers coming in to have visits or whatever she was talking about. Let's get just kind of a general idea then to understand how that's going to work on the property. And it's nothing that we do not want to do that tonight, because there's a lot of things, but I think there's enough idea for what they need to create. Again, should it go forward to the next discussion, that would be the most appropriate thing. Otherwise, man, making stuff by committee is just never a good idea.
Commissioner Schuler, I apologize for interrupting you.
That's okay.
My brain has a tendency, especially when it's going like this, to try
Remind
and
me of my wife in
find a
that way.
path to solutions. And sometimes my mouth goes off before my brain reacts. That happens a lot with me. Go ahead.
We make sure there's some protocols in place for like from my understanding, they do a breathalyzer, and if they don't pass it, do we have certain rules in place that once they're removed from the property that they have to, is there like a safety way that we can handle that as well? They check for weapons and breathalyzers. They do. I mean, if they tell them they can't stay in the facility, is there somewhere else or one way that they can direct them to make sure they're just not hanging out in the residential area? Is that something that we can put in place? And then the other thing that I was wondering is, you guys said there's so many beds. Is there something in place with this where they stay a certain amount of days, like they have to use, like when you're like on unemployment, you have to do so many resumes to get it? Do we have something in place in that way of that we're not just handing them fish, we're teaching them to fish to make sure that they're not staying in a facility, they're getting all the resources they need, so the people who don't want to be homeless, that they're not in these, it's not just a reoccurring cycle. Do we have that in place?
So those would be the rules of the warming center. That's where
Okay.
that would be addressed. I can tell you about the hanging out. As Commissioner Schuler mentioned earlier, there's a fair amount of public property. We don't have the ability to stop someone from standing on the sidewalk or sitting down on the square, regardless of who they are, what they look like.
With
or
like weapons
what
and
they have with
whatnot?
them.
And like with having weapons and stuff, isn't that more of a safety concern if they tell them to leave the property if they're still within the residential area? Is there a
short answer
protocol
is
to
no.
call the police or anything like that? Do they
The
have
short
like?
answer is no. It's not illegal to have a weapon in Wisconsin.
Okay.
You're a felon.
Unless you're a felon, but then that's already a law, isn't it?
It is, but somehow we just
Yeah. So if you are aware of someone being a felon that is in violation, then yes, report it and we can do something about it.
Okay, okay. I was
But,
just seeing if,
yeah,
just to make sure like they have that in place, just so that if this is, because the shelter is happening, I just want to make sure that there's all these different protocols since living next door that, because we're putting all of our trust in them to make sure that all these things are looked at.
Yeah, I do understand it, but the thing that keeps jumping back is it's very difficult to treat a person or a group of people differently than others. If they're doing something illegal, doesn't matter who it is, that's a problem, and those should be reported. If you know that someone's got a warrant, report it.
Right.
If you know that someone is in violation of parole, probation, or whatever, report it. If they're in the act of committing a crime, report it. We can do something about that. But standing on the street with a pocket knife in your pocket,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
Yeah.
when they're at a commercial property, they're at this commercial property, the people and the staff that are there, they're aware of this situation. Do we have a protocol in place to make sure that they have to do what they need to do to make sure that residents like me we are putting our safety and our trust. My next door neighbor now is the homeless shelter, so I want to make sure that my safety and trust is in them, that they have these protocols in place. I don't mind if somebody has a weapon, but if they come to the facility and they say, you need to leave because you have a weapon and it's dangerous, you need to get off our property, well, my property's right there. So do we have these things in place, these protocols and different ways of how we're going to handle this to make sure, because it is a commercial property. So if I ask somebody to leave my home, I have the trust with my neighbors that if I ask somebody to leave my home and they have a gun or something and I think they're dangerous, I'm going to call the police out of respect out of them. Do we have something in place for that? Because if something does happen, they ask them to leave, they know that this person's not, in a good mindset or something like that, and then they come and harm, me or somebody else in the neighborhood, who are we going to hold responsible? Because if somebody knew about this situation, it was a dangerous situation, it wasn't reported, somebody needs to be held responsible for those types of things. And that's with any business. That's not just a homeless shelter. I have a duty to, report something like that too. Do we have those protocols in place with these conditions?
Yeah, and absolutely, that you bring up a very good point, because we have a responsibility to our community.
Correct.
To report something like that if
Yeah.
we see it. But knowing your father was the police chief, he can also speak to the fact that just because you look like you're going to do a crime doesn't mean you're doing a crime.
Right. No, I'm
So
just
there's a really
saying,
gray area there that.
I was aware I discussed that somebody in the homeless shelter knew to only drink certain amount so that they could still get into the homeless shelter, and then they left. They couldn't stay there one night being over the limit because there's a certain amount. But is there some type of action in place when that happens, like with a weapon, like when they're removed? Do we have certain things like you need to completely remove yourself from this area? If you're not staying in a residential area, somewhere here, and you're not staying at the homeless shelter, you got to go somewhere else. Do we have those ideas in place for safety of everybody?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
One thought, and this goes to Commissioner Schuler's point. Can we just ask staff that when people leave, that they are directing them to church? Because this isn't all fenced in, and so I'm assuming of the two, we want them.
We did already say that when the ingress and egress will only be out the front door.
Right, but they can walk back through this path. I'm just saying when they're leaving.
I could walk through the path right now.
You could, but if staff if they're telling somebody they can't stay, to this concern, at least we want them back on Church versus getting back into residential.
Preventable, yeah, preventing.
Sure, how do you?
Because
These are all really good points, but
this
how
is
do you
private
enforce that?
property, the sidewalk is. So at this point, if they're asked to leave, they're trespassing.
Yeah.
But this is public.
Right.
So pushing them to Church at least mitigates the problem.
But how do you do that?
You walk them out.
And then,
Can I say something real quick?
absolutely. Officer Solis is our community resource officer. No, we're getting in the weeds, but this is good stuff because these are legitimate concerns. It's just a matter of trying to figure out a way to enforce what we want, but not infringe upon human rights.
Okay, so I'm gonna go down my list.
Solis, I would really like to have you introduce yourself.
Sorry. I'm Officer Solis. I'm the Crisis Intervention Officer for the City of Stevens Point Police Department. I just took over this for Officer Radsick at the start of the year. To address some concerns about warrants. Real quick, we do make arrests on the warrants if we can. There is some warrants outside of our jurisdiction that only that jurisdiction says that we can act on. So like, I'll use Wood County for example. Sometimes they're geo restricted, meaning I can't arrest on it. They have to be in that county to be arrested. So if they have a warrant, we're not always making that arrest because of that. Weapons, obviously, we can address it and stuff like that. We have certain restrictions though. We can't be digging in pockets and stuff like that because that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But obviously we can do a safety pat down and stuff like that. If we can articulate that's a weapon, we can address it. But obviously if someone says no, pound sand, we're not gonna be able to arrest on that weapon concern, okay? Your grant person situation, as far as I'm aware, I'm currently on Stevens Point Community Outreach and Partnering Together's board as a non-voting member. I just give them my input. They have a grant person, so that's probably why they said no. Maybe at that time they didn't, I don't know, just answer that. There's a lot of times I get contacted after an incident has happened where they were like, hey, I don't think law enforcement's needed today, but I'm not going to name the resources, but there's multiple resources that will contact me the following day and say, hey, can you please follow up on this? And I follow up on it. And then I was looking at one of our city ordinances for her concern. I forgot her name. But it says loitering. No person may loiter or prowl in a place at a time in a manner not usual for law-abiding citizens under circumstances that are warrant or justifiably and reasonable alarm or immediate concern for the safety of a person or property in the vicinity in any public way, street, highway, place, alley, sidewalk, and it kind of goes on from there. So with it, including the sidewalk, if there's concern where the warrant shelter says, hey, this person has a weapon, I've seen it, and they're just sitting on the sidewalk, I think we can definitely go for the loitering due to the safety, and it's just a city ordinance, and that gives us as an aspect to move them along. Does anyone else have questions?
That helps. As long as Officer Solis is up here, does any of the commissioners have questions? I know you've been here the whole time, so we'll reserve the right to call you back. How's that?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we'll continue on.
Jennifer Hall again, 2200 Rice Street. My question is, when the facility reaches capacity and people are no longer allowed in, what time are they basically going to boot them out of the parking lot? Because I'm thinking of, residential neighborhood, you have people loitering in the parking lot, it's now dark, people are going to start feeling unsafe, especially if there are weapons present. So I would feel better if we could have a third member on staff being a police officer. If that takes care of your weapons problem, it takes care of your loitering, keeps people in line, and I think it would give some people some peace of mind. And I know it's a lot to ask, because I'm sorry, this is a horrible, horrible location. I think you all know it. But
no, I think it's a great location.
I think it's a horrible location.
So we don't all know it.
But I'm concerned about safety. And my property doesn't butt up to the building. I'm fortunate that I'm across the street a little ways. But I do worry for the people in that neighborhood. You know, they're trying to go to sleep at night, and you've got people loitering around the building that couldn't get in. They have nowhere else to go. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Danny Mercer, 299 Bills Drive. I am on the SPCO board. There was a lot brought up, and I didn't, I could talk to any of it as needed and answer any questions anyone might have. But I just wanted to ask, when you're moving to make sure that everyone is off the property in the morning, first off, we've never really had a problem with that where we're at. Everyone has somewhere to go. There are people that have jobs. A lot of people just need to go get some more food or whatever it might be. But everyone has a place already established where they're going. Where that will be for each person is going to be different. So that being what it is, I would like to see if some way you could put in with the changes that you're making that it's okay that staff is there. That may be too obvious, but we will often, everybody leaves, we make sure they're gone, and we have to clean up, or we have to close up. There's also potential that we may have to have a meeting for what happened during the night for whatever reason, or go over and make a report, things like that. So just while you're making those changes, if you could in some way just make sure that it's okay that if our staff and volunteers remain. That was my only point.
Question for you, as long as you're up there, right now, what happens, I know there's people turned away every night, or almost every night.
Well, we've had people turned away, yep.
Because you have a capacity issue.
Yep.
But what do they do now? Do they hang out in the church parking lot?
No.
What do they do now?
It depends on when it is. Of course, we're currently the warming center throughout the winter. Things will change when we go for 365. Right now, most people will know. We've even had people kind of volunteer, like, okay, so-and-so needs it tonight, I don't need it as bad, and where they go is going to be personal.
Exactly, but they don't hang around the church parking lot?
No.
They don't go on the neighbor's property and hang out there?
No,
They
not at
don't
all.
pitch a tent?
They're very aware.
Parking lot?
Very aware of how people see them. You talk to any of the unhoused, even for 5 minutes, and they're not used to people treating them like human beings. The thing that we've developed here this year with SPCO is a community like nothing I've ever seen. I've been so impressed with the number of people that have gotten better at things. And yes, there are people that will come in and say, okay, I only had 2 beers today so that I can get into that blood alcohol. Okay, that's the same thing people do on a regular basis when they're driving, when they're at an event. And if you talk about the access to alcohol, I mean, this is Wisconsin. I could throw a rock and probably hit some place that sells alcohol, and we're next to a school and at the
Every
police
church
department.
picnic has a beer tent.
Right. Yeah, there you go. So a lot of these issues really don't exist on a regular basis. Will there be problems? Always. Again, these are all individuals, but what they do during the day is generally going to be prescribed by where they can go, of course, and they know where they're not welcome.
Okay, and I'm going to put you on the spot again, only because you're on the Stevens Point Community Outreach Board, and you're familiar with the operations. What happens now if you know that someone has a warrant and they try to get into the shelter?
It depends on when they came in, basically. Our system, we will look up everybody's record when they come in. We get their name, we get their ID, we write down who is there. We do keep pretty good records. I will say for me, I'm a much more digital person, and we keep it on paper a lot of times, and I hate that. But we do keep pretty good records on who is there and what they're doing. And people know, again, where they're welcome and where they're not. They also know that we will call the police. We have called the police. We've had, you have the numbers. We've had several times where it's been necessary. There have been several times where it was something that really wasn't necessary, but we felt was what was best, and that's what happens. Will we immediately kick someone out because of a warrant? No. No, that's not how we operate. We're not a resource center. There's a lot of things that we're not able to do. We're an overnight warming center. We're beds for the night and hopefully a meal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Certainly.
Alderperson.
Thank you.
For a couple of weeks.
Laura Broderick, 433 Wadley Street, soon to be former Alder of District 4. I want to bring up some procedural concerns. I think this conversation has gone completely off the rails and we are inappropriately getting into the weeds. So just in general, Staff does a lot of work before these conditional use permits come to our agenda for the first time. They put a lot of thought into the conditions that they put in that agenda and their findings of fact when they're assessing whether or not requirements are being met, right? We don't get to put any conditions we want into a conditional use permit. We are limited by statute. If they meet the requirements, we shall grant the permit. And those conditions have to be reasonable, and all of that is defined in a lot of detail legislatively, right? So what we have in our conditional use permit, what staff thought was the best route forward is, these guys are going to have a set of house rules. They're going to have guest rules that everyone has to follow. That's the condition. We're already saying whatever they need to do in order to keep this property and the surrounding neighborhood safe, they're putting in their guest rules. We trust them to do that. We either trust them to operate this building and these services safely, or we don't. We could spend 100 years talking about what the definition of professional is, what the definition of trained is, and never get there to something that will make everyone happy. So if we trust them, let's say, put together some guest rules that'll work. We trust you to do that. And if we don't, then we should be denying this permit. Thanks.
Thank you.
I actually have another comment.
Go ahead.
One last thing. In 2019, we did approve a conditional use permit for Scafidi with a condition that we would review every 2 years to determine whether or not to extend approval. I think this is a really, really potential opportunity to bring that sort of limited timeframe approval back. We should definitely be talking about that. If the concern is, can they do this or not, rather than arguing about conditions, let's just look at like
Thank
3
you.
months or something.
Great point. I actually thought about it, but I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to have Schuler yell at me again. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ethan Bauer. I live at 4755 Hayes Avenue. I think this is more than needed. I think we need a shelter here. We have way too many people out on the streets, among other places. But my concern is the capacity. I understand that we're looking at about 22 to 23 beds, potentially, with a capacity of roughly 35 people. So it's my understanding that you guys had a conversation last year, beginning of January. You had posted a conversation where you talked with Michelle and Tiffany from the shelter. And one of the things they said was over a span of roughly 3 months that they, correct me if I'm wrong, but they sheltered around 70 different people. Now, where are all these people? Right now at the shelter that we have, it's around, I want to say 20 is the max capacity. So where are all these people? They're in the shelter. They're on the streets. They're staying in motels and hotels around town. They're staying in their vehicles. And a lot of people are getting bussed in. Me and my wife, we do outreach here in town where we go out on the street and we meet them where they are. And it's given us the opportunity to hear some really interesting stories and just hear different places where people are coming from. And these people need help and they deserve help. But if we were to try and gauge how many people are out on the streets, we go out every Sunday and it's always different, but it's usually anywhere from 10 on the short side to, I would say, mid-20s. And that's just the people that we meet. Now, we go where we know to go to find people, and that's downtown. So the bus stop, the square, Piffner, Mead, and other places surrounding, and wherever we can find them, that's where we go and we see them. But we know that there's more, and seeing that previous number from only a year ago where there's potentially 70 different people with a capacity of 35, when we open up a shelter that's going to be 24/7, 365, it's going to attract people. I see us reaching capacity very quickly, pretty much immediately, simply with the people that are in our town. We've met people from day 3 of us doing it, of people getting bussed in from out of state and in state. We met a gentleman from Kenosha, a person from Wausau. Wausau has a shelter. They've been at capacity every time we reach out and try to see what's available up there. They're at capacity. It's my understanding that shelter is up to 60 people capacity. And every time we reach out, they're at capacity. And that's 60 people, and this is 35. So I just have concerns that, one, we're going to reach capacity very quickly, and there's more people in our town that once this becomes available, we're going to see them come out and try to go into the shelter. But there's not going to be availability. We're going to continue to see people that get bussed in, whether it's because they got sent here, because they're being sent from other towns that don't want them there. They're putting in ordinances where they can't camp, they can't be anywhere in town. They're being forced to potentially public areas that are out of town where maybe they can camp for 15 days until they get checked on, and then they're told they need to go somewhere else. And it's constantly rotating people, and it's really hard for a person to get out of the situation they're in when they're constantly being rotated around. So I think this is needed. We need this here in Stevens Point, but my concern is we're going to reach capacity. I think it's important that we find a location that we can grow into, not just immediately hit our top, hit our roadblock, and then what? Now we need another place. Now we're looking at what? We need to expand this building. Now we're reaching into issues with the parking. Now I just think that there's going to be a potential slap in the face with the capacity. There's already a lot of people here, and there's going to be more. And I think just Wausau is one example where you see that. You see consistent at capacity when we go to Wausau, whether it's just to go down on the square if there's an event or go out to dinner there at their nice restaurants. We still see people out there, so they're at capacity and there's still people out on the streets. And so if we are going to go through with the shelter, I think we need to make sure we provide a secondary opportunity for them to stay. And if there's going to be a no camping ordinance, then maybe we need to find like a public parcel of just open camping land that maybe is just out of town or somewhere just out of a neighborhood, something. But kicking them out of town doesn't help the situation. Telling them they can't camp there, they're going to go find somewhere else. And it's just going to be a revolving door of the same problem. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Schuler.
Okay, I totally agree with Alder Broderick. Thank you for your comments. And I guess I have just two comments to make then. I'm looking at proposed condition number 2 that talks about guest rules, and my only question is does the city have any interest in having a copy of those guest rules in their possession as a condition? So that
we will have those anyway. If you want to make it a condition, you can do that.
Well, I think you're talking
Mr. Hansel
about...
has already offered those handbooks to us.
But if you're expecting to have them, make a condition that you will have them, instead of just a handshake agreement that is really not based on much, except mutual understanding and respect, which, comes and goes.
Which we hope is good enough.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, and then the next one, I think, is can we just take the conversation and have the expectation for the applicant that when this, if it does move forward to council, that they have a more developed plan of operations that addresses many of the issues, at least broadly, that we talked about tonight. You're shaking your head. I don't know why, but...
It's already there. We have it. So for those of you who
why not make it a condition?
Wait, hang on.
I'm sorry, yeah.
For those listening, there was a comment in the back. Mr. Christensen, you're on the board there as well, right? He stated that there already is that's happening?
In a drawer in a desk somewhere, not at the city. Okay. I'm just talking about the city's responsibility for expectations, and to have a written summary of the operations, I think, is a very reasonable, whether or not you have it or not, is something that should be.
Can someone get that to the city tomorrow?
Absolutely.
We will have those in our possession tomorrow.
Great. Shouldn't it be a condition? This is a lot of just really casual stuff that I think is just... If it's not in our hand by tomorrow, or at least by council can deny it. I guess, do what you want. That's perfect. But it just seems it's a little casual from my perspective. And there's a lot of, it's okay. And I think anybody looks back, they'll say, okay, what were the actual requirements and considerations made by the city when they approved this? So that's my 2 cents, and that's all I'll have.
Thank you. Commissioner Beacom.
Not a condition, but a casual request. One person made the comment about having somebody from the neighborhood on the board. It's not for us to say who's on their board, but I think that's an excellent recommendation. We hear all the time that these are your friends and neighbors. You know, have the neighborhood engaged. And so if there's an opportunity to do that, I think that that's an honest and fair way to engage your neighbors. And I do agree when we're talking about, you know, who computes the data, you know, that would add to the honesty and the integrity of that process. Go ahead.
We did invite a neighbor to be on the board. I met with her. She has not been able to make any meetings, so.
Very good. Okay. And maybe someone else then?
During the day or?
Ma'am? Nobody can hear anybody if they're not on the microphone.
I didn't talk about that.
I'm just going to go on record.
Okay.
I'm in the neighborhood. If the meetings can be scheduled where I'm not at work, I will gladly be on the board.
Thank you. All right. There is merit to Alderperson Broderick's suggestion of approving it for a year and review it in a year. That way, if there's any problems whatsoever, you can not or add conditions next year. Is that something that the commission is interested in entertaining? Because we have done it before.
Yes.
Okay, let's make that a motion.
I make a motion that we add a condition that the,
Well, so, hang on if I might, because I think this clarifies it.
Of course.
We would be looking for approval of the conditional use with the conditions outlined, subject to a review 1 year from approval, because it won't be considered at council for 2 weeks. But
isn't that a condition?
Is it a condition? A condition that you review the condition in
I
a
would
year?
say that you add a condition saying that the conditional use permit shall expire 1 year after adoption,
There you go.
and it will be up to this body and the council to consider a renewal of that.
That's why we pay him the little bucks. So the condition would be that it expires April 20th of 2027.
If you want to pick an arbitrary date.
Well,
Yeah, by statute.
That's right.
By statute, it doesn't say
that would be
a
1 year from
specific.
the date of council.
By statute, it doesn't say a specific time. It's up to you folks in the governing body to dictate what length that ought to be.
Okay, then the only question would be, is a 12-month period an adequate amount of time? And we could talk about that, I guess, for 4 hours too, but.
Your call. Yeah, your call.
Sure.
All right, so the
I hear
motion-
2 years.
2 years?
No, go 18 months. Jesus.
I think that's too
H.
far.
Dancing Christ.
I mean, a year seems reasonable. I mean, if these concerns are valid, we'd want to address them as soon as we can.
Then 12 months seems to be the consensus.
All right, so the motion is to add a condition that this expires 12 months from adoption. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Yes.
I'm going to second that for the sake of brevity. Discussion on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye.
And I'll just add that it's up to the commission and the council for renewal of that for a duration.
Just
at
depending
your-
on how this goes, if it gets approved,
Yeah.
make a note to bring it back up in
Just so
March
that's,
so we can prepare.
that's part of the condition.
Yeah. Okay, now, we're back to the original request as amended.
A cruel person would say, read that back, please, but I would move approval.
It's all on video, too.
As
That will be
amended.
preserved forever.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve as amended. Adam, did you want to read those additional amendments back? Paraphrasing, because you're going to go to the video and get the exact wording.
Basically, that the conditional use permit shall expire 12 months from adoption of the condition, from passage of the conditional use permit, and that it would be subject to renewal by the planning commission and common council.
Yep, and condition 4 should be amended to say city staff.
City staff.
And condition 3 will be
a minimum of 2 people shall provide supervision of the facility at all times, one of which is a professionally trained staff member.
That's it.
And did we want to have the guest rules on file with the city?
Sure. If we want to do that. I have an assurance that they will be in our hands tomorrow. If they're not,
Doesn't matter.
council can deny it. I think we're making a condition that the rules be on hand. What if we lose them? Is that our fault? I think we're really getting into the weeds here. I want to see all of your house rules.
Yeah.
Let me see them.
When it affects the public, you should.
And if they don't provide them to us, we have them.
You don't have
Or we don't have to approve it.
And we can go like this, just like you always do.
So, yes, that's exactly it. So, all right. Do you want to make that an amendment, Commissioner? Or do you have trust that our council president is going to do what he said?
The point, I will say this once, is not whether or not the council president follows through on his anecdotal information provided to this body. The question is, what are the written expectations through a conditional use permit by the city for the operation of this on that site?
Do you want to amend number 2 to say, and provided to city staff?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that.
And also, I would like to have the council be able to see a more fully formed plan of operation for exactly what will happen on the property. In terms of hours of operation, anticipated functions, that type of a thing.
Okay.
Not to back them into a corner, but to have some accountability for anyone that asks the city, what are they allowed to do? The city will have a conditional use permit that describes that. Anecdotally, I don't think really works. And it's a reach.
Sure, come on up. If anyone wants to talk about the rules in the handbook, please.
There is the point about when we look at reviewing conditional use, we can only consider the documentation that's been submitted with the permit. It would be really useful for those rules to be formally considered part of the documentation submitted, because as of right now, they're not actually on the public record with the city at all, and that is an oversight. That is something that should be corrected. However we want to do it, I don't know if a motion is the best way, but it is missing right now.
All right, so on the amendment is number 2 will have, after the conditional use approval, there will be a comma and the words, and submitted to city staff.
Just on file with the city.
On file with the city?
Yeah.
And on file with the city. All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Once again, we're back to the original amendment, or the original request as amended. Now, we had a motion and a second on that before, didn't we?
We did.
We've
Yes.
amended it since. Oh, parliamentary procedure tells me that we should have another.
Can I accept the amendment? Or do we need another motion? Either way, let's
The city
do that.
attorney is actually listening in the other room, and for the sake of getting home at a reasonable hour, I am going to allow it. If there's objection from the city attorney on that procedural change, speak now.
Don't hear any heel.
You don't hear any running down the hall. So we're going to vote on the ordinance, or the proposal, conditional use request now as amended with all of those changes, including the most recent one. Any last words? All right. All those in favor of allowing the conditional use as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. For those who don't know, Commissioner Shady Stroik had mentioned that she had to leave, so she will be marked as excused for that part of the meeting. Okay, we are now at
About halfway done.
item number 7. A request from the city of Stevens Point to sell the property located at 281 Washington Avenue with the parcel identified in your packet. Adam? Chris? Who?
I'll take that.
Thank you, Chris.
We have a small R3 zoned parcel, and it's 0.14 acres on the city's north side on Washington Avenue. It was purchased to address blight and remove an outdated water main. All of that work has been completed, and would like to sell the parcel for redevelopment. the recommendation is to recommend the sale of the parcel.
Yep, as you know, the commission's purview in this case is to, for any acquisition or disposition of city land, the council has to make a recommendation. We own it, it's not earning taxes right now. The goal is to sell it, build on it, provide some housing, and get taxes.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation that the city sells the property.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 8. A request for the city of Stevens Point to acquire a property at 809 Division Street with the parcel identified in your packet. Who wants this one?
JB is not here, but yeah, if you would like to, we're happy to take it.
Sure, you got a memo in your packet. The property in question is, oh, he is here.
Sorry.
Chief, do you want to give a summary real quick?
Yes, I apologize. I was fielding a question.
Fair enough.
Sorry, I don't even know what was said already on the top.
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Nothing. You held up the entire meeting.
Oh, I apologize. So let's just do this. So with the requisition letter, obviously we are looking at purchasing the property adjacent and just north of the Stevens Point Fire Department. I believe it is 806 or 809 Division Street?
Yep, 809.
809 Division Street. This site actually represents a rare opportunity that I don't think we can look past. In 2013, there was property just south of the current fire station that is now the location of the new university parking lot. And what that did was that basically has hampered our abilities to create or develop anything to the south of our current location. As many of you know, the Stevens Point Fire Department has done a gap analysis looking ahead into long-term needs for the Stevens Point Fire Department. With this city's ability not to be able to expand to the south because of the village of Whiting, to the west or to the north, the Station 1, where it's currently located, will continue to serve the community exactly where it is. As the community grows to the east, Station 1 will need to stay right in that geographical area or just actually at that location. As many of you know, we redid many parts of that station over the past few years. One of those projects included the new parking lot in the back. With that parking lot and meeting the community development needs, we've had to increase our green space, and we've lost some parking stalls because of that. With the upcoming project on Division Street, we are currently going to be reconstructing the front side of that station in the short term, and we'll have to deploy out of the back of the station and back all of our apparatuses in off of that parking lot. We have also are going to have to get rid of 3 additional parking stalls in the parking lot, and we're going to have to close 2 of the parking stalls down on the street to be able to get those apparatuses out and be able to back those apparatuses in now off of Isidore Street for every response that we respond out on during this construction phase. Short term, we've been able to, we did not sign an MOU, but we've been in agreement with UW Credit Union to be able to park our command staff parking vehicles along with additional personal vehicles at the current location, as long as we allowed to keep the 3 immediate stalls by the front door open for showings during while this was or has been for sale. So with that being said, some of the short-term impacts or benefits that we see is with this Business 51 project, the ability to park additional parking for command staff or emergency vehicles along with our personal vehicles. The second thing is a rapid deployment for our vehicles. As you know, our vehicles are getting larger. And we are losing space within the facility. Our chief's bay no longer is a chief's bay. All of our chief command cars are outside. Our utilities are outside, our plows are outside, and now additionally our trailers are outside as well, out at Station 2. Over this past winter, we had emergency responses where we have to deploy a vehicle from Station 1 to Station 2 to hook up that trailer and then go to the emergency. With that causes additional delays in responses. And this past winter, because we have to park those trailers and some of these extra pieces of equipment out in the woods or off of blacktop areas, they got frozen to the ground and caused even a longer response for these things to be able to happen. Also, when we talk about future expansion for the station, when we look at the future of the Stevens Point Fire Department and where we're going, many of you know that I've got that 10, 25, 50, and 100-year plan that we're trying to put in place.
Chief, can I stop you for a second?
Sorry.
President Christensen, could I trouble you to ask very nicely for the people in the hall to move it down a little bit? Just please. Sorry, Chief.
Nope, not a problem. What we've looked at is we know that moving forward, a normal firehouse will last anywhere between 75 and 100 years. At that point, it's become obsolete or served its purpose and will either have to be gutted and completely remodeled or destroyed and rebuilt. We are looking at Station 1 to fall into that time frame around 2042 for the process of looking at what that's going to look like in the future. Obviously, we know if that's going to be rebuilt or updated, we're going to have to meet the codes then at that point and all of the requirements, which I can tell you right now, the current footprint of that facility is not going to fulfill the needs for that station in the future come 2042. So the proposal also will include our long-term strategic value of the non-taxed revenue generated. There is a potential that if purchased, we could look at what we're going to do with that space in the future. One of those things would be, short-term would be parking, long-term would be demoing the building and additional parking. And with that, we could look at a joint partnership with the university as well. We've looked at engineering to help us with data on that, and there looks to be room for 43 stalls if that building would be demoed. We also look at the potential to add high-density storage up in the north part of the property, if need be. We talked about some of those trailers and other things that could be stored or deployed out of there. And then ultimately, if and when we develop or look at this further, we could look at the real estate value in this becoming an increased scarcity on Division Street or Business 51. So ultimately, what we're looking at is short-term parking, long-term parking, and demoing of the building, and future expansions, potentially long-term, of Station 1 past 2042. This project on Division Street would follow the planning and the vision of the new Business 51 plan and the future planning of the city and fire department. So that's why I would like you to take careful consideration in this request, and I would be open to any questions that anyone may have at this time. Yes, sir.
Chief, does the bank have any value to you at present until you get to that phase 2?
At this time, the building has no value to me. It's the land that we hold the value to. And when I look at this, we've talked about this several times with that, is unfortunately the building is there. And we have to consider that in our offers and how we look at things financially. But we also have to look at where we're at and where we're going, and not having that opportunity, and I said this to a few others, the coulda, woulda, shoulda opportunity to the property to the south would make more sense, but obviously that's gone. The university is not going to give up parking. It's scarce as it is. The building right now does not have a value to us.
Go ahead.
When the existing fire station is expanded, improved, whatever, there's not room to expand it exclusively on there, but could you expand the facility if you had the park that, the parcel to the north? I guess, is this parcel and the existing building big enough for future expansion if you didn't have to worry about parking and storage and other aspects? Would this new parcel give you the additional room you needed to make do with the existing parcel in the future?
Yes. So we've looked at this several different ways, and there's several ways to look at this, and I don't have that crystal ball or the answer in the future when we get to 2042 or 2045 or 2050. But we can look at basically the current property where the Stevens Point Fire Department is. We would be able to completely demo or rip down to the studs and gut it and rebuild it on that current site, with knowing that we would have parking then in that property to the north on the other side of Franklin Street, which would work. Another option that we could look at is we can look at what that building would look like if it were to deploy out of across Franklin Street, and all would deploy out onto Division Street and have the actual drive-through on the back from the Isidore side. There's potential for a lot of different opportunities and options, but with this additional land, it would facilitate what we need into the future. Yes.
Any other questions? So again, we're only looking at a recommendation. I know there's already been some discussion about the price we pay for it, the taxes we're going to lose, and some criticisms that have been floating around already. We don't have an agreed upon price. We have made an offer that has not been accepted yet, but we are anticipating we're going to be very close to an accepted offer once we have the recommendation to go ahead with this. Council, of course, will have to be briefed on all of that. It's ultimately their decision on whether we spend the money and whether it's worth it for the tax loss to have the future expansion of the Fire Station 1 secured in that area, or if they want to do something else with it. But regardless, the Plan Commission has to make a recommendation to acquire or not acquire based on the information that we have right now.
And we're generally not supposed to consider finances in these things.
It's not the Plan Commission's purview to do that. That's subject to the Council and the Finance Commission, Finance Committee, and they will both be considering that if and when we have an accepted offer. But again, we don't have an officially accepted offer yet. We have a reasonable expectation that we're going to have one soon. Commissioner Rice.
Do we have a expected rough timeline of when this section of Division Street will be disrupted?
This year. They will be starting on it this year, but when it will be disrupted, so the Public Works Director is not here. We will be starting Briggs. Is that what he said at staff today?
Correct.
So we're starting at Briggs this year. We haven't gone to bid yet on it, but we will be soon. Okay. So you can expect it probably late May, early June, where things will get started. And then we'll be heading north. The roundabout at 4th and Division will be completed, is expected to be completed this year as well. So the disruption in that area will occur this year.
Okay.
But the overall rebuild of Business 51 is expected to be multiple years, obviously.
Sure.
So
but from
disruption
Briggs to
could
4th, really just
occur.
this year, most likely?
Yes, the direct construction will take place this year.
And Chief, what's the rough number of parking that you're going to need to flex because of that this year?
The rough number that we're going to need to flex this year because of that?
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at anywhere between 7 and 10 stalls.
Sure.
And even with the building staying upright and not demoed, we would be able to fit into those needs with this purchase. As you can see, there are multiple stalls to the south of the building. And then also there are 4 stalls. Most people don't see those stalls, but there are 4 stalls tucked back into the northeast corner of the land as well.
Sure.
So we would be able to have 4 stalls up there. And then also we were already looking at where we could look at additional stalls, because if we purchase it, we would have control of that. We could even put stalls on the opposite side for us to use by the drive-through.
Yep.
Yep. And I think it's important to restate, Chief, I think you alluded to it, but with larger apparatus, the most recent apparatus we had has clearance of how much between the what do they call those, the headers and the door?
Yeah, so currently Tower 2 that is housed at Station 1, between the top of the aerial apparatus, the device, and the actual the header of the door has about 3 to 4 inches to clear. If we hit the pothole the wrong way or we hit something, we've actually caught the chains for the garage doors for the emergency closing of them. We've also caught a few other things, and that's when our operators are really paying attention.
And the reason that's important is because when we get a new apparatus, if it's 4 inches bigger, it won't fit.
Yeah.
What we have the ability to do, though, is add a bay onto the back of the building, but that takes up parking spots. This acquisition of this property secures our ability to grow Fire Station 1 while remaining in that location for the future.
And I guess that's what I'm thinking about, is it's 2 different problems, right? One of them is there's a short-term problem that we need to address. We need 7 to 10 parking stalls. I see 60 immediately south of the building, and I see 200 immediately to the west of your building. And so I don't know if that's been discussed with the university or with the YMCA about getting temporary parking for a year. That seems like a very easy and far less expensive solution for the summer. Obviously, it doesn't address these other long-term needs that you guys are thinking about.
So to answer that question, the university and the YMCA have been very grateful in working with us in those partnerships and allowing us to use either the northeast corner of the YMCA parking lot, or the university has also allowed us, when they're not in session, school's not in session, they will allow us to use their stalls as well. When I say those 7 to 10 stalls are the need, those are on a day-to-day basis. Anytime there's an appointment, a promotion, an educational training at Station 1, Citizens Academy, anything extra, a swearing in, any of those additional things, we're already using those additional assistance from those organizations, and it gets pretty tight over there. And so we have been looking at that and working with them as well. But to do long-term planning, this is what we feel is the right move.
Sure.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, as much as I hate the economics of this idea, the university bought the houses where the parking to the south of the firehouse is a long time ago. So, in terms of their strategy, they buy houses, they sit on them for a decade or 2 until they need them. If Firehouse 1 is going to be here for a long time, then that's part of our strategy, and so.
And to answer that question, I made a mistake in my my request, and it said under that station expansion in 2024, the future bay expansion and facilities upgraded required over the next 2 decades. And I should reiterate, it's not over the next 2 decades, it's for the next 100 years. Because the next 2 decades is when we're going to be looking at this issue, and being able to have this and to address that issue would then take care of the next 100 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, sorry, just to poke at this a little bit. I mean, if you guys are really thinking long-term strategically, and you, the fire department as well as the city broadly, you're saying that the facility maybe is effectively inadequate with the next vehicle purchase. Is really the best long-term solution to revamp a currently tight spot and then having a property that's not even adjacent, it's across the street? We've got how many vacant acres up on Vincent Court, 1 block north of here?
It's not ours.
You could take free reign. It's not yours across the street either, right?
You're right.
Like, if you're going to make strategies about long-term planning, are we weighing all the options? I realize this is an opportunistic thing right now. It is right here. It by no means is an ideal solution. Again, I don't think it's absolutely not a necessary purchase to get through the year from a functional standpoint. More convenient, for sure. I totally understand that. But if the bigger goal long-term is we need a much more appropriate space and building, having these two disjointed parcels that just doesn't seem like the ideal solution, especially if we're just going to tear this building down. Again, we've got plenty of vacant land 1 block north of here.
So to answer your question on that, we have looked at that property.
Yep.
Initially, when the dealership was tore out of there, and then when the elbow room was taken out of there as well.
Ellis.
Ellis, sorry, not the elbow room, Ellis. Yes, I apologize. But after that was all taken out of this, that piece of property has been considered, and the cost on it and where we're at with everything and for future development. And again, when we look at this for future development, if you look at where the current station is, that whole parcel right now could become a station, and the parcel across the street could become complete parking. We do that with City Hall right now. Currently with the county building, parking is across the street for those personnel, and this is what we would be looking at long term as well. Is we would redevelop the site that the current station is on for the new station to develop and meet all of the new standards that are set by the fire service or community development or those in power. And then again, across the street would be that additional parking area.
Commissioner, we've also tossed around the idea of potentially closing Franklin Street in that area and allowing it only as access for the fire department. So that could be a possibility if and when it ever came to that.
Sure.
It's actually what I was going to say. The only thing other than the fire department and the credit union is some little garden, some sort of growing space that the university has. So theoretically, you could close off that street and you could build right across the street if you had to, a brand new big state-of-the-art firehouse in 2042?
So if we were looking at that, we would look at closing off Franklin Street and developing the firehouse to basically go from where it's currently located on the south side north, having access for our apparatuses to come in from the backside off of Isidore, and then where Franklin Street sits now, or just into that parking lot, would be where our administrative part of the building is. Kind of how you look at our building right now, it's kind of set up as an L. If you've ever been in there, you know the flow of the traffic. And then on the very northern end of the property here that we're looking to purchase would be where we would have a community parking lot, so people could come in to the public half of the building and be able to meet with staff and then be able to exit back out, kind of where the drive-through is right now, if you're looking at long-term.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion.
Please do.
I would like to move to approve the request from the City of Stevens Point to acquire the property located at 809 Division Street. I think it's one of those things you have to strike while the iron is hot. This opportunity could slip through our fingers, and then we could really be in a world of hurt. So I'm in support.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Artson. Discussion? Comments from the audience?
Just one last thing, Mayor, before I move aside, and then I'll answer any questions anyone has. Is, again, I apologize for being a little late. I was out there addressing an issue, and so coming back in, I was kind of hot under the gun, and I didn't know what had been addressed yet, so I apologize for a rocky start, but any questions you have, I'm here to answer.
Thanks, Chief.
Mark Christensen, 1641 Clark Street, District 1 Alder. I'm strongly in support, too. I think this is kind of a unique opportunity. It's going to enable us to keep the fire station number 1 located in the perfect location. The existing lot will not allow us to expand, and you're right. We could tend to, even if we needed even more space, we could close off Franklin. It doesn't go through to the east anyway. But these kind of opportunities don't come around all the time. Pete hit the nail on the head earlier, saying this will help set us up for the future. It'll be some money now, but it'll also prevent us if we can just add on to the back side of that building and have that be parking. Renovating the existing and then with putting on additional will be significantly less expensive than tearing down and going everything from scratch. Building it from scratch on another site, we'll have to acquire that property and build the entire building too. So we know once you do that extensive of a renovation, you're going to have to meet the new codes. Right now, I've been in that fire station and moving around the apparatus when everything's parked in there. It's tight, and the equipment's not going to get smaller. So I am in strong support.
Thank you, President Christensen. And I got to tell you that we haven't run the numbers yet, but I'm guessing that the loss of property taxes will be significantly less than the cost of debt service for a new facility.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, probably a dumb question, but I'm assuming we've approached the university about buying that lot and helping them find another lot. I know that they're incredibly underparked, but this is not an ideal location for their parking either.
Yes, we have. They also have a lot invested. If you recall, when we put that parking lot in, we required stormwater management on site. So under the parking lot are these massive tanks that hold stormwater runoff, and it goes into the system that way. So there's a significant amount of money that the university has invested in that property.
We can't do like a parcel trade with a parcel to be named later or something?
We haven't gone that far. We haven't gone that far yet. But I mean, we try and work with the university to the best of our ability. This one is no exception.
Okay. And Commissioner Beacom, I would also note, I mean, us acquiring this property with the university also owning the 3 just to the east.
Yep.
That could very well be in the cards an option.
Yeah.
This parcel is it accomplishes the long-term goals by offering a lot of flexibility on what we could do. Could be linear one-way, north-south.
Yeah.
It could be a parcel trade.
Commissioner Wright's got me thinking, but I mean, what we're looking at is it's a much better location for the university, and their lot's a much better location for us. It would be great someday down the road if that worked out.
Maybe down the road it will.
Yeah. Sounds like the fire department property is high value for the university. They'd probably give us a pretty penny for that.
We've actually talked about that too, but
yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't need to, beat the horse. I just look at the map and man, there is parking all over the place in that corridor. I also hear anecdotally every year the university loses students, and somehow every student that shows up brings 2 cars. So that's a weird situation that's happening. And I'm also baffled by the cost of commercial property on Division Street doesn't seem to be affected by the supply of commercial property on Division Street. We add unused vacant commercial property, feels like every 5th week on that corridor, but prices never go down. It's very weird to me. So anyway, just some notes.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
I have attended events at the fire department, Station 1, during the day when the university is in session. There are cars parked solid on the street, and I've parked, because I'm a credit union member, I parked in the lot one day when they were open to go to an event at the fire station thinking, well, I'm a customer over there.
Customer, it's credit union, we're part owners.
It is not easy if you've got a family member that's being promoted. The fire department does a really nice celebration of those things, and it's hard to find a place to park down there when you want to be there for your dad or your husband or your wife being promoted. and you can't, the in-laws can't find a parking space or whatever, it gets really difficult. So anything that will help ease that a little bit also is a good thing, so.
All right. I just had one comment and question, and Commissioner Rice kind of mentioned it. Is this in fact the optimal place for a fire station here? If we're going to be changing it at some point in the future, and it sounds like this decision is going to say, yep, this is where we're going to want it, and this is the best place for it. I don't know that it is. I'd take your word on it if you said it is.
So I will answer that question because I will be coming in front of you guys again next month for another project. But after running the gap analysis for the city of Stevens Point, looking at how the city or where the city boundaries are currently, where the city is expanding and how the city is expanding, also what type of services we're providing within the city, and the services we're providing that we're contracted to provide throughout the county, and how those responses are looking as far as meeting certain requirements. When we talk about those requirements, from the initial time of page till our members are out the door, depending on what type of call it is, there are expectations within our department policies and procedures in place that they're out the door within 60 to 80 seconds, depending on what type of call it is. They also are expected, our first due apparatus from the time of the call to the time that first apparatus is on scene is within 4 minutes of the time of call. The reason that happens is because fire grows 16 times every 3 minutes. So what happens is if you had a waste paper basket fire in a residential home, in a office, we'll say, by the time we get there, that becomes a fully involved room, or what we call a room and content fire. If you have a room and content fire in the middle of the night in your residential home, because that's when the smoke detectors are going to go off and sound, and by the time you get out and you call 911, it's a room and content. If we don't have that first apparatus there within that time frame, it becomes a fully involved structure fire. So when we look at and analyze the city and where the growth is with community development and where the future expansions are looking to go, we've ran those numbers and we've ran that data. I believe that was, Jared, was at about a 40 to 50 page document that's on file currently. And Station 1 is exactly where it needs to be. Station 2, I'll be honest with everybody here, could vary a little bit depending on how the city works. But Station 1, again, because of what we border on the south, west, and north side and where the expansion of the city is going, Station 1 is exactly where it needs to be. 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it's exactly where it needs to be.
Good to know. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other comments?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, the motion is to recommend acquisition of the property. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, noted. And that gets approved. Item number 9 is discussion on the zoning code rewrite. At this point, I need to excuse myself, not for zoning code reasons, but I'm going to turn it over to our zoning administrator, and he's going to finish it out.
Going over?
Yeah.
It's like giving a speech when the bar's about to open.
I am going to keep this very brief, in part because my brain is turning to mush, and also it is halftime. So if any of you want to watch the rest of the game. Michigan's up by 4. All right, so priorities. So providing an update with the zoning code rewrite, we got pretty dense stuff. I'm going to provide just the general highlights of what's included in here, the thought process behind all this. What I ask is that you, if you have any clarifying questions, recommendations, comments, long or narrowly tailored, feel free to shoot me a call, shoot me an email. whatever you think is best. So first item is being the performance standards for all the base zoning districts. So you have all the proposed base zoning districts and their performance standards here in the packet. These performance standards would be your lot standards, minimum lot size, lot width, and then your building standards, how tall it can be, as well as proximity to lot lines. Essentially, I guess the thought process behind this is, there's a ton of data that was pulled looking parcel by parcel for all of these districts about the lot size, comparables, building setbacks for those lots, lot width. There's a heck of a lot of data that was pulled and disseminated to get to present what is actually in here in the packet for consideration. As far as lot size are concerned, I guess there's comments in here pertaining to what some of the changes are and how many additional lots would be now conforming with that change. For lot width, generally speaking, there's some more minor changes for some of the lots, for some of the districts rather. For a fair amount of the districts, there's relatively minor, if no changes at all. And then for the building setback standards, generally speaking, you're going to see a reduction of setbacks with the proposed versus what's existing. Mind you, that's in large part due to the fact that the built environment of the city is not consistent with the standards that's in our codes right now. So it may seem, with a lot of these changes, it may seem like a substantial change from what's existing, but again, it's more so to make this be reminiscent of how the city's currently built out. I guess a few particulars. Lot size for multifamily development. In our current code, we divulge into minimum lot size requirements based off of the number of bedrooms, differing lot size requirements based off of if a residential unit has or does not have a patio. What my goal here is to make it as consistent and I guess easy to administer, easy to follow as possible. Frankly, whether or not a residential unit has a patio or not is a moot point in determining what the minimum density requirement ought to be. So really the intent here is to establish minimum lot size standards based on ground floor tenants, and then for above ground tenants still have a certain lot size requirement per unit. Shockingly, a lot of newer communities who recently updated their codes, they don't place they place just a standard lot size requirement for multifamily and mixed use development, regardless of how many units are being proposed. And frankly, I think that's a bad idea. There ought to be some barometer to say that if you're going to increase the number of units, there better be an increased lot size as well to account for that. For setback standards for our residential districts, you see a rear yard setback is a good example where we require a rear setback of 20% of the lot depth, minimum of 15 feet, maximum of 30 feet. Here you just see a baseline number to keep it consistent because frankly most of the lots are fairly similar with one another. Likewise, side yard setbacks, you see situations where we require a cumulative side yard setback of 25 feet with one side not less than 12 feet. Again, just keeping it easy and straightforward and having a pretty straightforward number. So all in all, there's a lot of numbers here. Again, if you have questions or if you have concerns with some of these, feel free to shoot me an email, shoot me a call, or schedule a sit down with me. Sorry. For the second item, so the supplemental regulations for the accessory land use table. So that is starting somewhere in the packet, starting on page 87 of the packet. So this is following the accessory land use table, and these are essentially the unique regulations for applicable accessory land uses. I'm not going to go through every one of these, just a few items of note. So accessory structures, what's changing from what's existing? Currently, we don't have a limit as to the number of accessory structures, so long as the cumulative size does not exceed 900 square feet. What's proposed in here is to bump it up from 900 to 1,050 square feet. So essentially, if you want to have one detached garage, currently you're allowed a 30 by 30 garage. Under here, what would be allowed is a 30 by 34 garage plus some pocket change square feet. Then secondly, gazebos and pergolas currently are counted towards that maximum square footage calculation. Under the proposed, those would be exempt because they serve a different purpose. However, the height and setback standards would still apply.
That's a quick question. Yeah. We've talked a little bit in previous discussions about pervious surface. Is that coming up at all in any other ordinance change?
This will, yeah.
Okay, and so this would contribute to that as well, so there might be other limitations beyond just that 1,050 as it would relate to pervious surface?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yep. Accessory dwelling units, this follows a similar structure to what we have currently. The changes from what's existing is, number one, to make it be permitted by right, scrapping the conditional use permit requirement. Number two, to eliminate the separate utility connection, because that is very much so a cost barrier to construct an ADU. And then add some clarifying language regarding the internal and attached accessory dwelling units that you see in the middle of page 88. Home occupation ordinance is copied verbatim from what we have currently, in large part because this was adopted, I think, maybe a little over 2 years ago, so it's relatively new. And then for solar and wind energy systems, for solar, adding some language written in statute pertaining to the decommissioning of those systems. For wind energy systems, it's adding some standards pertaining to height and setback from the true peak of the wind energy system. And then swimming pools, hot tub, saunas, similar installations, it is maintaining the status quo that it is exempt from rear yard setbacks, but must meet the side yard setback for primary structures. Went through a lot. Feel free to look through all this, send me your comments, schedule a time to meet with me. Otherwise, we'll keep on trucking with this.
What's up next after this?
Yeah, so we have the Special Plan Commission meeting on the 21st, going to rip the Band-Aid off and have the conversation pertaining to parking. So more information will be coming out probably tomorrow or Wednesday, but essentially there's going to be no recommendations brought before you folks. This is going to be a guest speaker coming in talking about parking, how communities have regulated parking minimums, and honestly what I'm hoping for this is to be the ripping of the Band-Aid type of conversation where you kind of just, everybody speaks their truth regardless of what side of the issue they may fall on, and hopefully letting it lead to a more fruitful discussion for you folks. Because I mentioned to some of you in private in the past that the conversation of parking is probably going to be the most difficult thing to come to a consensus on. So I want to take the slow and steady approach and really have you understand from our guest speaker the different perspectives and different ways that communities have addressed that over the years. Otherwise, really after this, we'll be going through more of the site development standards. So we're going to be talking about driveways, fences, access, kind of that niche of the zoning code coming up.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Then I think
Who's chairing the meeting right now?
It is Mary.
Okay.
Unless she wants to relinquish it and volunteer it to somebody else.
No.
It's all I do. We only got 2 more.
Oh, so I'm taking over now, or?
Yes.
Okay, so, item number 10, the January, February 2026 monthly reports. Director.
Found on page 93 and 94 of your packets for January, February. Big ticket items, we have housing going up, mostly Forest Creek. There was one permit for a two-family on Starling Court. That is the development off of Hoover. So great to see new housing units consistently going up, varying in price, valuing from, I think the lowest is 217, all the way up to 560. So a great range there. But unless there's any questions.
Starling, that's a true duplex, not a twin home?
True duplex. True duplex, but it's being built so that if it would be a zero lot line down the road, it could be.
Could be, sure. Okay, cool.
Don't remember, do we need to put this on file?
Correct.
Okay, we don't need a motion?
I think we do.
I don't think so.
All up to you.
If you want to be safe, you can. I don't think we have in the past, but.
Usually I don't think we do. Well, okay, we'll go on to item, any more questions? Questions from anybody still here? Or still online? Alder Schuta's hanging in there?
Is anybody still here?
We'll go then to number 11, the director's report.
A lot of information there. I mean, we already went through Forest Creek, 52 of 60 lots sold in this report. We just did get an offer for 3 more, so we were at 55 of 60. Staff has started to look at phase 2, with now proving the concept of density and how it can work and that we can support more housing. We are looking to pass that off. The city is not necessarily the best developer nor the best landlord in most cases, so if we can pass that on to the experts, we would much rather do that. So looking to RFP that. Working with our finance department right now on what that would look like for a price, and we'll hopefully get that out this month or next, more than likely next. Otherwise, mostly everything else is in here. I guess the only thing I would note, there was a press release put out today by Century Insurance. They are looking to do a renovation of their home office. Probably the best way to I guess, read more about it is just to search Century Renovations. And it's going to be the first press release with Century's logo. It should come up fairly easily once you search for it. But they have some renderings of what that's going to look like. More to come. Obviously, this is just the announcement of, hey, this is happening. There'll be more to come on timelines and things like that. But always happy to take any questions. Otherwise, if there aren't any and there are later, feel free to email or call.
Anybody, questions? Then we will stand adjourned at 9:30.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.